Well, hello and welcome into Off the Bench here on Tuesday. What is it, December 16th? And Cincinnati, boy oh boy, is Cincinnati on a streak of just terrible, newsworthy articles, topics. Run the gamut here for the past 3 to 4 weeks where it feels like every single day we're dealing with something new. A lot has been made about the Paul Dehner article in The Athletic. We'll have Craig Sandlin on later on around 10:30 today to talk. Craig Sandlin from Chatterbox Bengals, Chatterbox Reds. We're going to talk Bengals today about that around 10:30, so be sure to tune in to that. We're going to talk about something that oftentimes in this world you get worked up over things, and sometimes you're justified in getting worked up over those things. I don't believe I'm justified in getting worked up over Elly De La Cruz not being able to play in the World Baseball Classic, but I'll rant about it all the same because I think it's kind of horse manure. I think it's kind of horse crap. We'll talk about that later. And, of course, we'll talk about the Cincinnati Bearcats to lead off the show. Wes Miller, who looked like he was interviewed at Shawshank this weekend after losing to Georgia in just debilitating fashion. That team, that season appears more and more to just be slipping through his fingertips. And I don't know where the Bearcats go from here, but I have some suggestions. And if you're wondering, yeah, we're going to be talking buyouts and firing and all that stuff. Reed Mouse joining along here with Stone Shield. Stone, thank you so much, as always, for producing the show, being here. It's been the weather. Hey. The weather's looking a little better this week.
Yes.
It's warming up a little bit, which I could just tell by your gleaming demeanor that's waking up the Key West soul inside of you.
Yeah, I can't handle the cold like I used to. Obviously, I'm not old at this point yet, not like you are over there, about 10, 12 years my superior, but
10, 12 years?
But I can't
Golly.
handle the winters anymore, man. These past few days have been tough, but yeah, I saw the forecast for the rest of this week, and it's warming up a little bit here. That's promising.
It's 10, 12 years. We take jabs all the time, just quiet little subtle jabs. That was a Mike Tyson right hook there. I'm 5 years older than Stone. 5, right? You graduated from high school in 2019. I graduated in 2014. Yeah. I'm 29 years young.
Yeah.
And I'll be 29 years young for about 2 more years before I finally give in to being 30 years old. But let's break into the show. I know Stone talked about this yesterday. It's a story that took place Saturday, but obviously we had to dedicate pretty much the entire full hour to ranting and raving about the Cincinnati Bengals, what they can do to instill back some hope into me as a fan, into you guys as a fan, because that hope, which was hanging on by a thread already, has been nipped at the bud, and we're gonna have to find, because that Paul Dehner article just put me in a worse spot than I already was. Once again, we'll talk about that later on in the show, but there was other news in the Queen City this weekend, and it had to do with the Cincinnati Bearcats, who there was a bar. There was a bar set before the season that in the NIL year, in the NIL era, where the Bearcats have been since Mick Cronin had left, first with John Brandon and now with Wes Miller. He's entering year 5. And Bearcats, he's in year 5. That the bar was set. It wasn't a big bar. I don't think we were asking them to pole vault a world record for the Bearcats basketball team. We were simply asking them to make the tournament. You're in the Big 12. You'll have a lot of opportunities to earn quad 1, quad 2 wins. You'll have you have a fairly strong non-conference schedule that includes teams like Dayton, includes team like Louisville, which, by the way, both those games happened in your own city. They were neutral sites, which actually kind of helps you. Then you play Xavier and Georgia, which happened on Saturday night. But we now kind of have an understanding of who this UC team is. And they are a team that defends fairly well, that is very talented, and yes, now there are questions about the talent. simply because of the way that they're playing, but I still am of the opinion that this team is very talented. You get one of the best recruits in the country. You bring a guy like Baba Miller, who has, every time he takes the floor, people are like, oh my gosh. When he was at a mid-major like Florida Atlantic, you're like, this dude can play. We saw him. Chatterbox Sports broadcasted a Florida Atlantic game last year, and he's the one that stuck out above everyone else on the floor because he is skilled. He looks like an NBA talent, along with the other guys. Wes Miller can bring him in. But the more that we see them play, the more that we watch Wes Miller coach the Cincinnati Bearcats, we see the same thing over and over and over and over again. And that is, for 20 minutes, they play hard defensively. You're not sure what they're trying to accomplish on the offensive side, because for what you see is a team that doesn't shoot well, often settles for ill-timed, long-range three-pointer shots, and they're not falling. And when you play a well-coached team, like I believe Xavier is, that doesn't work out for you. When you play a team like Georgia, who, by the way, I know they've got some wins under their belt, but that's not a team that people are beating home about. And you hold with them for 20 minutes, and you come out in the second half, and you look like your team just completely gives in, quits. That's been the MO. This team in the second half, time and time again this season, they give in, they quit. They have no ability to win in finish time. They have no ability to close out games, these close-fought games. You got to play a full 40 minutes. And it's becoming more and more apparent that Wesley Miller's teams aren't able to do that. And if you look at their schedule, we mentioned they're non-conference. In the Big 12, there's so many teams. I'm not the schedule maker of how it all works out. So I'm going above my pay grade here. But you look at who UC's going to play this year in the Big 12. The best, if it's not the best, it's the second best basketball conference in the country. And yeah, you do play teams Houston, Iowa State, Kansas, BYU. But the teams that are the hardest teams in the conference, you only play them once. Get a chance to knock them off one time. And then you can get your wins against teams like West Virginia, who you'll play twice. Teams like UCF, who you'll play twice. There's a chance there was the capability of UC finishing out the season with a pretty good Big 12 record. But you watch this team, and no, they're not. Spoiler, they're not. Because they can't play a full 40 minutes. They have no offensive identity whatsoever. You talk to UC fans, and the thing that frustrates them the most isn't the fact that Wesley brings in these high-tier talents and they seem to not develop. Isn't the fact that this team has been unable to make the tournament in 5 years at the University of Cincinnati, a proud basketball program, and it appears likely that they'll not do that again this year. They're 126 in the net currently. They'll have opportunities to prove that wrong. But those are just symptoms or just precipitations of the symptoms of this team. The thing that frustrates UC fans the most when you sit down and you watch them is you're not sure what the team is. Because you're getting mixed signals. When Mick Cronin was the coach here in Cincinnati, you fully understood what this team was going to be. This team was going to be up in your face every single night, 40 minutes, and they're going to muddy up the game, put a fog over the rim, and hopefully win 55-52. And when you sat down as a Bearcats fan, you could gear up. You could buckle into that. And we're going to have Keegan Nicholson on later this week to talk about kind of the current situation with the Bearcats. But you watch this team, and you're not sure what they are. Yeah, I mentioned it. They play pretty hard defensively, at least for great parts of the game. But offensively, there's nothing there. And you pair that with what Wes Miller said before the season. This team's going to run up and down. This team's going to play fast. That's not the case. There's no movement, and they're just hucking up threes. Scud missiles right at the steel rim. Just laying brick after brick, which if Fifth Third Arena needs a new facade, they can do it with their three-point shots with all the bricks that they're shooting. This team has no offensive identity. And if you're wondering what's going to come of Wes Miller, I'm not sure. But the buyout as it currently sits is $13 million. If you wait till the end of the year, which they're going to do if they make a move at all, It'll be after the year, and if you wait till April 1st, you'll save yourself $3 million, and his buyout is right around 10. And people will say, maybe this UC team doesn't have the ability, this UC NIL collective, this UC athletic department, donors don't have the money to buy that out and also put a winning product out on the floor. Well, I can tell you right now that with the current coach, you're not putting a winning product out on the floor. The bar isn't high here in Cincinnati at the current moment. It's not. A decade ago, we were seeing UC and Xavier not just make the tournament, but be very high seeds, 2 seeds, 1 seeds, 3, 4 seeds. And over the past 5 years, since COVID, long time ago, between UC and Xavier, they made the tournament 2 times, 0 from the Bearcats. So it's pretty much where does the buck meet the road? And we'll find out this April. Or I guess we'll find out this January when Big 12 play starts. Because as I mentioned, UC still has the talent. I believe they still have the talent. Can the coach get them there? It's becoming harder and harder to believe that. It's becoming harder and harder to believe that. But they'll have plenty of opportunities to knock off teams like Iowa State, Houston, BYU. And Wes often isn't the best coach on the floor, so we'll see what happens when they play a team like Houston. But I'm oftentimes wrong, and I hope I am. I hope I am that this UC team figures it out and they get some exciting basketball here in town. Xavier starts their conference play tomorrow night against Creighton. We will have Paul Fritzner on this Thursday to talk about that win or talk about that game. I'm projecting a little bit. Creighton's obviously skidding. Most of the Big East is skidding this year, so there is opportunity even with Xavier not having the best roster that they've had in the past 7 years. They still have an opportunity to do some exciting things. So I mentioned it. There is oftentimes in this world where you could feel yourself getting bent out of shape, and you kind of look around and like, am I crazy? Am I crazy for worrying about all this? Am I crazy for thinking that this is just, I'm hard-pressed to find the right words, to find the right lexicon to describe how I feel. But we talked about it previously on the show. Ellie De La Cruz was previously committed to playing for the Dominican Republic in the World Baseball Classic, which will happen this March, which if you're a baseball fan and you haven't dedicated a lot of time to the World Baseball Classic, you've got to lock in. It is unbelievable. It is unbelievable. You're watching the best players in the world represent their country. And when you go to those island countries in the Caribbean, countries like the Dominican Republic, I know it's not a country, but Puerto Rico gets a team in the World Baseball Classic. When you see those teams play, you realize this is their nation's sport. This is what they pride themselves on. And I previously thought, this is awesome. It's awesome for Ellie De La Cruz, who gets to represent his country. It is awesome for the World Baseball Classic, which is ran by Major League Baseball, which is, I don't know if you guys realize this, there's a direct line correlating with the popularity of baseball in this country and the popularity of the World Baseball Classic. To where if the World Baseball Classic keeps gaining popularity, it's never going to be the Olympics or FIFA or anything like that, but it has the ability to be a money generator for Major League Baseball, high tides raise all ships kind of thing, to where the Reds can benefit from this financially if it continues to go forward. But after it had come out that the World Baseball Classic, or that Ellie De La Cruz was going to play for the Dominican Republic in the World Baseball Classic, the WBC deleted that tweet, and reports had come out that the Reds have not given permission to Ellie De La Cruz to play. Hasn't been reported widely, speculated, and it has been, as I mentioned, deleted that Ellie is no longer going to be on the World Baseball Classic roster. Every roster that comes out doesn't include him. So 2 things about this. 1, it is illegal. Major League Baseball runs the World Baseball Classic. It is illegal for teams to forbid a player from playing unless they're rehabbing from injury or there's some injury thing, which obviously Ellie De La Cruz played last year banged up for the great majority of the year. And here's my opinion on it. I feel like an old man yelling at the clouds. Yes, it is of the Cincinnati Reds' best interest to not let their best player have the capability to hurt himself, especially coming off the year that he had where he was injured or at least hurt for a lot of the season. There's a difference between being hurt, banged up, and being injured. It is of the Cincinnati Reds' best interest to not let Elly De La Cruz play. But the reason I'm so worked up about it is because there's pretty clearly desire from Elly. There is desire because it was announced that he wanted to play. And obviously something happened after the World Baseball and the Dominican team announced that he was playing for their team because the tweet got deleted, and then rumors started swirling that the Reds aren't going to let that happen. And you might be asking, well, I mean, like, is there a precedent around the league for not letting their players play? Well, let's take a look at the rest of the Dominican Republic's team. Stone?
Here we go right here.
Who's starting in left field? The $600 million man, the $600 million investment, Juan Soto, star Dominican player. Oh, what about the Padres' two young Dominican players? Are they forbidding them from playing? Manny Machado, Fernando Tatis? Well, of course not. Well, the Blue Jays were just on the doorstep of winning the World Series. What about their best players? Yeah, he is. Vladimir Guerrero right there. Mariners? They were on the doorstep of winning their first pennant. What about their best young player? Julio Rodriguez. Well, he's playing in center field. One of the best young stars, shortstops in the league, Geraldo Perdomo. The Diamondbacks can't sacrifice losing one of their star young players like the Reds can't. But Perdomo's playing. Jose Ramirez is playing. You can bring it back on me, Stone. The point is that across the league, the Dominican players, that is their nation's sport, and you can tell how rowdy and how excited the country gets because they travel to America to cheer on their players once the World Baseball Classic hits. And they pack the stadium. And you can tell that it means a lot to these players because they play in it. Jose Ramirez, Vladimir Guerrero, Manny Machado, Fernando Tatis, Juan Soto, Julio Rodriguez, players better than Elly De La Cruz. And the Reds are forbidding Elly, who had desire to play, from playing on him. And I get it's of the best interest of the Cincinnati Reds to not let him play. But it feels a little soulless. It feels a little not caring about your superstar. I don't know the word you want to throw into that, but it feels like the Reds don't give a flying F about what Elly De La Cruz wants to do. If you want to read through the tea leaves, we'll see how this plays out. We'll see how Elly thinks about that, watching his country's brethren go and compete and maybe win a World Baseball Classic championship. And he wasn't there because his team said he couldn't. We'll see how he thinks about that in March, and we'll see how that comes up in years to come when, you know, you can keep saying, man, I want the Reds to extend Elly, but this certainly isn't the goodwill that you can bring towards your superstar to keep him home. Sometimes in sports, there are things better or that go above just your team. It's the same reason that we get worked up about Kyle Schwarber not wanting to come home. Oh, he's just going to take the money. It's the same reason that we see time and time again the human element get just disappear from sports. Sports, business. And it's just disheartening that Elly, who pretty clearly wanted to play, had committed to playing, had told Albert Pujols that he's going to play, the manager for the World Baseball Classic Dominican team. And he was going to get to play with Manny Machado, Fernando Tatis, Juan Soto, Julio, the titans of the sport. And the Reds said, no, you're not. Not going to do that. Stone, I don't know if you have an opinion on the Reds. It's being reported that they're not allowing Elly De La Cruz to not play in this.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because, as you perfectly laid out, like, he wants to play. This is a big moment for him. There's people that he's idolized from his country that are playing, and it's a great opportunity to go out there. And we talk about getting the valuable reps, too, right? You talk about the environments of these WBC games. In a lot of ways, it kind of simulates a playoff game in Major League Baseball. So I think that experience could be very valuable for him. But
Sure.
from a Reds perspective, I mean, the reports came out that he was playing with a partially torn quad. So I understand their pause for concern and, wanting to hold him back a little bit. I think ultimately it just comes down to, is this their call or is this the player's call? And, he is under contract, right? He's their player. I guess they can make that decision. But I'm with you. It hurts that, they would go out there and potentially do this. It could also create some friction between the player and the organization.
I think it will.
That's not good. Oh, yeah, because Ellie, it's very clear, as you pointed out, that he wants to play.
He committed to the team.
Yeah, he did. So I guess just because he was hurt, I get it. And we were talking off the air, like, it doesn't matter. Like, these teams, they don't want him to go play in these games, right?
No.
Especially for a pitcher, but even a guy coming off an injury, they don't want him to play. I think it would be great for the game, great for obviously his home country, great from an entertainment perspective, and maybe an experience perspective for him to go out there and play. I understand it from a Reds perspective, but I don't necessarily agree with the decision, but they're being careful here.
It's just the Reds pretty clearly have a lot to lose here. He's their best player. He's their superstar. He gets hurt the same way, and it happened in the last World Baseball Classic. The Mets lost Edwin Diaz for a year. The Astros lost Jose Altuve for an extended period of time. You understand fully what's to risk here. There are legitimate concerns. There are legitimate things that could happen that could derail the Reds season. But we're seeing these other teams. The Padres just went all in last year. They go make sweeping changes. They give the farm away for Mason Miller, a closing pitcher. They go all in. They have a lot to prove here in 2026, and they're letting Fernando Tatis and Manny Machado play. The Mets committed $600 million to Juan Soto and had a season from hell, a September from hell that was so terrible it got the Reds into the postseason, and they're letting Juan Soto play. The Mariners, they spend more money than the Reds. They're not some huge market. They're on the doorstep of winning the pennant. Their first pennant ever. They've been a team for 60 years. They've never been to the World Series. And they're letting their MVP caliber center fielder. Oh, what about the Guardians? Maybe could go down as the best Guardian to ever play. Jose Ramirez, the slept-on superstar, does everything well. It's not a big market team. They can't afford to lose Jose Ramirez. He's playing. All these Dominican players are playing. Ellie wanted to play because of what it means to their country, what it means to their culture. They get to play together. You're going to get Ellie De La Cruz to get big-time at-bats, probably at least in the semifinals or the championship. I don't know if he would have started over Geraldo Perdomo, but he certainly would have played a lot. Ketel Marte, Perdomo and Ketel Marte, middle infield for the Diamondbacks. Ketel Marte's probably gone. They're going to play. I guess what I'm saying is the precedent has been set across Major League Baseball that when a player wants to play in this, you let him play. In fact, they have rules against it. And there are little caveats. No, the Major League Baseball is not going to come knocking down on Joe Nuxall way and be like, hey, why didn't you let Ellie De La Cruz play? I hope they do so that this never happens again. Because baseball fans around the world, Dominicans can see one of their countries, their nation's heroes go out there and play. It just sucks. It just sucks. I don't know what else to say because it was really exciting. But it is what it is, I guess, at this point. We will see how it all plays out. I can tell you right now that it's not helping your cause for any extension talks because oftentimes when you're a small market like the Reds, not only do you got to pony up some big money, but you got to play the part of, oh, we'll let you do what you want. I know he's banged up all last year. You want him to get healthy, but he committed to playing, and then the Reds. And I wonder how that call happens. Were the Reds not aware? Like, start to think about this. It was announced by the World Baseball Classic that he was going to play. They put a graphic out. Ellie De La Cruz has told Albert Pujols that he intends to play for the Dominican Republic. Delete the tweet. Nick Kroll, Castellini, Terry Francona calling up Ellie. Yeah, you ain't playing in that. Sorry. No, you want to. Nope, not happening. Too important here when all the other teams in Major League Baseball are letting their players play. I tried to find what the punishment was because there is rules against forbidding a team from playing. I don't think it's been, the precedent has been set, and it won't. They're not gonna come knocking on the door, but I hope they do. I guess I hope Major League Baseball does, because it's and I'm I get it. I'm not the Reds fan in the room. The Cubs are gonna send likely 8 players of the World Baseball Classic. Matt Boyd, Pete Crow Armstrong for Team USA. Jameson Taillon's likely going to play for Canada. Shota and Seiya playing for Team Japan. Daniel Palencia playing for Venezuela. Miguel Amaya playing for Panama. Like, there's 8 plus players playing. And do I want to see them play? Yeah. Do I want to see them get hurt? No. But that's the price you pay, and this is good for baseball. World Baseball Classic becoming more popular and having one of the true superstars. Elly De La Cruz is a superstar. You go around youth baseball games, people are wearing 44. And I can tell you it's not for Anthony Rizzo, it's for Elly De La Cruz. He's one of the coolest players in the league. He's on the cover of the MLB The Show. And then in a chance to once again put him out on the market. What about the Pittsburgh Pirates? They're letting Paul Skeens pitch. I don't know. You guys can say I'm losing it. I do feel like an old man yelling at the clouds, but c'est la vie. C'est la vie. All right, we promised him. Craig Sandlin coming on here, backwards hat. I was going to ask you both Reds and Bengals questions. I guess I've been ranting now for 15 minutes. What is your opinion on the Reds not letting Elly De La Cruz play in the World Baseball Classic?
Well, I think here's my question is what conversations happened before Elly decided to announce that, right? I don't know if I'm even ready to completely rule out the fact that Elly won't be playing in the World Baseball Classic, but I am ready to have the conversation about whether or not Elly went through the proper channels to have that conversation with his management group in Cincinnati before he made that decision. Well, that's the question for me. Was there ever a report that, hey, we had this conversation, we told you not to play, or hey, we had this conversation and we said it was okay? Because it sounds like he didn't get any of that conversation. And so whether he officially is not going to play or just, hey, we're going to delay this and actually have a conversation like adults like we're supposed to before you can, decide to go out and say that you're going to play in this thing. Maybe those are two different things. So I don't know. Has it been reported that he's officially not playing?
It has not been officially reported. The World Baseball Classic has deleted a tweet, and now reports are coming out that they had not approved it, which is funny. Correct. That they even have to, because there are rules saying that they're not allowed forbidding it. So why do you have to get approval when it's against the rules to forbid it? You shouldn't have to.
Well, is it a requirement to get approval, or is it just the right thing to do?
I don't know. There is the caveat. This is where I haven't read the bylaws or anything like that. It is a tournament put on by Major League Baseball, and they are forbidding it. I don't know if there are bylaws that say you have to get approval, because there is the caveat that if you are rehabbing an injury, like Elly is, right? He played through that quad injury all last season, and presumably you want him to be completely healthy. I don't know. I guess the point is I don't understand why you'd have to get approval when there are blatant rules saying that they're not allowed forbidding you. And if it is, I don't even think it's on the Reds for not foreseeing that he has a chance to play and talking to him beforehand. If they didn't want him to play, they knew the World Baseball Classic was going to be in 2026. It's for them to go like, hey, we really don't think you should play in this before he agrees. So I'm not putting any blame on Elly De La Cruz like I think that you were kind of trying to do there.
I don't know if it's like blame per se. I think we've seen a lot of immaturity from Elly De La Cruz. And I think that there's a possibility that this is just another one of those growing pains of a 23-year-old that didn't understand the real world, where even though they're not allowed to block you, the right thing to do is to still go and get permission. And so I was with you. Like, I was shocked that conversation even had to happen. I was surprised that, all those tweets were deleted after Elly, kind of informally announced that he was committed to playing. But we also just watched Terry Francona give in and allow him to play 162 games. So, like,
sure,
who are we to say that this isn't something that, hey, let's at least have that conversation, and then if we still want to play, then you can go play, which Elly's Like, honestly, if he's given that opportunity, we have to all agree he's just going to go play, right? Like,
Right.
I don't think there's any real conversation there that if he's given the opportunity, he's going to go do it. He's already shown that. But I guess at this point, it's kind of a courtesy, right? Like, the NFL, it's a written rule that if you want to interview an assistant coach,
right,
you have to get permission. But, like, how often are people denying that permission?
Sure. Yep.
It's pretty rare.
You have to go through the channels. And you're right. If Ellie is given permission, like most foreign players, like Team USA, people are turning down the opportunity all the time. Team Japan, they don't turn that down. Team the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, Venezuela, they don't turn. The Netherlands, who mostly come from Curacao and whatnot, they don't turn down that opportunity to play. I get that I'm making a mountain out of a molehill. I just think it's slightly disrespectful to Ellie because it pretty clearly means so much to the country he comes from, and presumably, don't know Ellie, presumably means a lot to him. And you can tell how much it means because Juan Soto, Fernando Tatis, Manny Machado, Jose Ramirez, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Julio Rodriguez, they're all playing. They're all playing, and all those teams have something to lose. The Mets' $600 million contract is at risk. The Mariners were on the doorstep of winning the pennant. Vladdy Jr. was 2 outs away from winning a World Series. You know it. They all have something to lose. The Reds aren't the only ones with something to lose here. It just fires me up in a way that it probably shouldn't. You know what else fires me up, Craig?
I love you getting fired up about Cincinnati Reds baseball, Reed.
I do. I get fired up about baseball in a way that I guess I didn't recognize as frequently as I do. Like Stone always makes fun of me. He's like, you get fired up when it comes to baseball sometimes. I do. Let's get fired up about something else. Did you have a chance to either read or see some of the snippets from Paul Dehner's article, friend of the show, Paul Dehner? He's been on Stone Shield show on before. Article about kind of where the Bengals are at in terms of Zac Taylor and Duke Tobin. Did you get a chance to see any of the snippets of that or read it?
Well, let me start with this. When you wake up to a text message from Reed Mouse that was sent to you at 6 a.m., you automatically know something happened. He's not reaching out because he just wants to be friends. He's reaching out because something happened.
Whoa. We are friends.
I immediately said, oh, man, what's he want to talk about? What happened? What's the breaking news? And then I opened the old X account, and first thing that pops up, of course, is Paul Dehner's article. And yes, I had a chance to read through the entire thing. And I don't know about you, Reed. I think I tweeted this out. I think the biggest bombshell in this entire thing that really kind of shapes the rest of the conversation is that after the second AFC Championship game, Zac Taylor was given another 5-year contract. And so he actually has 2 years left under his contract, despite what everyone thought was that he was going into his final year of his contract. So now the conversation shifts. Again, he's making like $4.5 million. Let's not make this into some sort of massive amount of money that the Bengals would have to pay to not have Zac Taylor as their coach. But the truth of the matter is that this is the same organization that allowed Marvin Lewis to be a lame duck in his final year because they didn't want to have to pay him not to coach.
For people that didn't get a chance to read it, or people that haven't been on Twitter and seen the current uproar from Bengals fans, I'll sum it up as quickly and as best as I can. Pretty much everything that I talked about for an hour on yesterday's show about how they need to fire Duke Tobin, how they need to fire Zac Taylor, the article pretty much laid out it ain't happening. Duke Tobin's job is not in any jeopardy, even though there is noise from the outside. Zac Taylor has 2 years left on his contract that they'll have to pay out. So even if they fire him, they'll still owe about $9 million, meaning that if you go out, like I said yesterday, and get a $15 million head coach, which, by the way, is the going rate for really good head coaches in the NFL, which, by the way, is a steal when you're making it to the postseason every single year, that would mean the Bengals presumably will have to pay about $20 million over the next 2 years, which, I don't know if you've been around Cincinnati a time or two, ain't happening. It ain't happening here in this town. So buckle up, because we are strapped in for another few years of Duke Tobin or Zac Taylor. And Craig, you and I were fired up after they lost to the Bears and the Jets, and they said, by tomorrow morning, these guys better be out of a job. That was 6 weeks ago, and not only are they still with a job, they'll likely have the job for at least 2 more seasons. I don't know what your opinion is on that.
We're running it back, baby. As soon as I saw, I don't remember who it was, but someone tweeted out just like a reminder, Zac Taylor only has 1 year left on his contract. And then I saw that Paul Dana responded with, "Not so fast."
Right. I thought that there was like an
this
extension going on when I first read that. I was like, are they going to Craig, I'm not kidding you. If reports come out before the end of the year that Zac Taylor gets an extension on his contract, I'm done. I've never threatened this ever. But if he gets an extension before the end of the year, which is how I read that first tweet, it's not going to happen. But if that happens, I'm done. I'm out. But go on with your point.
I think one of the things that was most surprising to me yesterday, because I was doing some research on this, and it's been widely reported that Zac Taylor makes around $4.5 million, which we all know is on the low end of the spectrum. But what was surprising to me is I did some research around the other like lowest paid coaches in the NFL, right? Because there's a lot of conversation around, okay, if you fire Zac Taylor and let's say $5 million is your budget, who realistically are you going to be able to hire? And we all know about the Andy Reids of the world who are making $20 million a year, but who's on the other end of that spectrum? And I don't know if you've seen this, but there were a couple names that, of course, are not surprising at all, right? Dave Canales with the Carolina Panthers was at the time considered a cheap hire, not really somebody that was on a lot of radars. Brian Callahan with the Tennessee Titans was on the list of the lowest paid. But then we get into some more like surprising names that are on that list. And it starts with Todd Bowles in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Todd Bowles is only making around $3 million a year. And that's a team that has been consistently in the playoffs for years now. You look at Kevin Stefanski, who has been NFL Coach of the Year twice, only making around $3.5 million. And then maybe the most surprising one, because he's due a new contract or whatever, but Dan Campbell in the Detroit Lions only making around $4 million a year. So everybody wants to paint us into this picture of, well, you can't find a good coach for only paying $4.5 million a year. I think you can, but you got to kind of luck into it, right? Kevin Stefanski wasn't the hottest name on the list when the Browns hired him.
No doubt.
Dan Campbell certainly wasn't the hottest name on the list when he was hired by the Lions. But they've turned into quality head coaches. And so it all turns into the question of, can this Bengals front office identify the up-and-coming talent in the coaching realm that maybe they can afford to bring in at an affordable rate while not being maybe the hottest name on the list, right? You're not going to go out and get a Jesse Minter. You're not going to go out and get a Robert Saleh. But are there other people that you can go out and get? You're certainly not going to go out and get John Gruden, but who can you get that maybe has the making of becoming that next high-quality head coach? And it's just a matter of, similarly to the draft, do they have the ability to identify that and to make that move? Or are we going to be in this kind of constant wheel of, hiring quarterback coaches that don't pan out?
And that's the point. Like, that's the point of why guys, dummies like me, say you have to spend more money, because the reason you spend more money, because it's a proven commodity. This team, you're right. Dan Campbell, really good head coach. He clearly has an element about him that the Lions, that city, kind of feeds off of. And yeah, you can shop in the bargain bin to get a guy like that. I think Dave Canales is a pretty good head coach. Once again, you're shopping I would say guys like Todd Bowles, you probably got him on a discount because he was the heir apparent. He had failed before. So you're like, hey, we'll give you another shake at this thing, but you're going to have to take a budget cut because he was so eager to come. There's convincing here. But yes, you can shop in the bargain bin. You can do that and win some games. The problem is, with this front office and the mom and pop operation that we have here in Cincinnati, I have no confidence that they can get that very smart, well-esteemed player or coach. I don't believe they can. So yes, you do have to, if you want to be serious, you're going to have to spend a little more. And as I've mentioned time and time again, they can be cost cautious. That's what this team is. That's the diplomatic way of saying that they're very cheap. They're cost cautious in this city. But I guarantee you, Mike Brown, I guarantee you, Duke Tobin, Katie Blackburn, whoever's pulling the trigger on a head coaching hire, if they do go that route, which I don't believe they are, If you spend $15 million on a head coach and this team is going to the playoffs perennially, like every single year, you are getting a budget. You are making your money back on that investment. There is no greater ROI in this sport than a great head coach. Great quarterbacks cost $60 million. Great wide receivers, great edge rushers cost $30 and $40 million. A great head coach costs about 15 to 20. That's a great
Reed,
return on investment.
Let's say you were given that 15 to 20 million dollar budget.
Yeah.
Who's your first call if you're the Cincinnati Bengals and budget isn't a question?
So my first call, admittedly, is going to take something else happening in the division. I've said this before, and I get egg on my face, and people laugh at me all the time. If the Baltimore Ravens part ways with John Harbaugh, you make an incredible push for him. He might not want it. He's going to have a lot of opportunities. He's going to have a lot of suitors. You make a push for him. If Mike Tomlin becomes available, which it's becoming more and more likely that he stays in town because they just won again last night and they look like they're going to win the division. If that happens again and he gets fired, you make a serious push at them. If not for those two, I buckle in. You ready? A guy like Mike McCarthy isn't a bad hire. He's won everywhere he's gone. He's won 12 games with the Dallas Cowboys. He's won a Super Bowl with the Green Bay Packers. You can say, well, he's had good team. He had Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. Well, he'll have Joe Burrow here. We've seen a proven track record of, okay, Mike McCarthy might not consistently get you over the hump. He went to a lot of NFC championships. He might not get you over the hump like he did in Dallas, but at least you're there. At least you're in the dance, which, by the way, is all we're asking here in Cincinnati. We're just asking to get to the dance, to get a date to the prom. That's all we're asking. Let us play in January and let's see what Joe does, because we've seen it twice and the returns on that investment have been pretty good. So you can call me crazy for saying Mike McCarthy is a name that I'd hire. And by the way, you're not going to have to spend $15 million on Mike McCarthy, but that's a guy that I'd go after because he is a proven winner. He has just as many playoff wins as guys like Mike Tomlin and John Harbaugh. So you can laugh at that. I don't know what your opinion is on a guy like Mike McCarthy, which I know you've said defensive guys before. He's an offensive guy. But, yeah, Mike McCarthy would be a name that I'd go after.
Yeah, the thing about Mike McCarthy is that, yes, he's an offensive guy, but he gets organizational management. And I think the reason that it didn't work ultimately in Dallas is because Jerry Jones is so hands-on.
Sure.
So that's the question with Cincinnati is, all right, you have a de facto GM in Duke Tobin. Katie Blackburn handles the negotiations with free agents and with extensions. Will they allow him to be involved in that? And I'm on the record that I actually think that Zac Taylor has more say in personnel than many people give him credit for in terms of the draft and otherwise. So I do believe that Mike McCarthy would have success in Cincinnati if given the opportunity. John Harbaugh would be a slam dunk hire if he was available. But I think we both know that John Harbaugh, even if they called and offered him $15 million, probably does not take the Cincinnati job because, like you're saying, he would have so many other opportunities on his plate. But at the same time, he's got an offense in Cincinnati that he wouldn't have to spend a whole lot of time worrying about. He brings over basically his entire staff from Baltimore, and boom, now you're cooking in Cincinnati. So there is a world where that makes sense, and maybe he would come. But now let's talk about the opposite end of the spectrum, Reed. Let's talk about the lesser known names that potentially would be on the list. And we put out a list of them on social media yesterday, as you know. A lot of people in the comments with some interesting takes and some different opinions. Obviously, a lot of conversation around John Gruden, around Jesse Minter, but I think those guys are probably out of the price range of what the Cincinnati Bengals will be looking for. I'm personally really intrigued by a guy like Matt Burke, who was able to very quickly turn around the Houston Texans defense. But again, as you know, I'm kind of leaning defensive side of the ball here in terms of where I'd be going.
Matt Burke doesn't intrigue me for two reasons. The latter of those two reasons is because he coaches underneath a defensive guy. So he's getting help. He's being guided on that side of the ball. And I'm with you that a defensive guy would be a great hire to this. But the other reason I wouldn't want a guy like Matt Burke or Jesse Minter or Joe Brady guys like that, because I don't want a guy that learns on the job. I don't want a coach that's going to be coming in here and we've got to have some growing pains with him as a head coach. It might be a home run. We're seeing Ben Johnson do it in the Chicago Bears, but I think Ben Johnson is kind of an anomaly in the fact that he is one of the most highest regarded offensive coordinators that we had ever seen since Josh McDaniel with Tom Brady and the Patriots. But I don't want a guy to learn on the job because Joe Burrow's career, he's not getting younger. By the end of next season, he's going to be 30 years old. I want a guy that I don't have to grow with. I want a guy that is ready to go. John Gruden, Mike McCarthy, guys that have won in this league before. So that's where I'm there. I want the Bengals to spend money to get there, but we know that it's ultimately not going to happen. Is even if the unlikely thing that happens is, okay, they fire Zac Taylor, unlikely. It's even more unlikely that they spend big money to where the names that you are going to keep throwing out. So Matt Burke, Jesse Minter, give me another one if you got. Joe Brady hasn't coached hasn't been a head coach ever. He's the quarterback coach for Joe Burrow. Also, I'm sick and tired of the old 2019 LSU thing. It's been 6 ye're on Thaddeus Moss, and there was the rumors we were getting Justin Jefferson, and then I seen some dummies on X.com when we put out that graphic say, let's bring in Coach O. Let's get Coach O here in town because no one knows Joe Burrow better than Coach O. And it's like, what are we doing? It's 6 years ago, guys. The game has changed. The world has changed.
Go Tigers.
I think the thing with even Joe Brady, though, like he's going to be probably the number one name on the list for many people in terms of available head coaching jobs and, outside of the existing head coaches if they get fired in John Harbaugh and stuff. But, like, I don't think he's even in the price range of the Cincinnati Bengals in terms of being their next head coach. He would have to take less to work for Cincinnati because he wants to work with Joe Burrow just because he wants to come to Cincinnati and work with this offense. Like, I don't think that this would be the best offer that Joe Brady gets in terms of a payday.
Right.
He's probably the hottest name on the market in terms of assistant coaches. I
do know this. Don't discount the attractiveness of the Bengals as a landing spot. When Marvin Lewis was hired, and he was kind of a big name when we hired him 25 years ago because he had been the DC through those great Ravens years. When we brought him in, the Bengals were a dumpster fire with really nothing going well for the last decade. It's a la like the New York Jets are right now. Even the last time that we hired Zac Taylor, we weren't a great landing spot because we didn't have a quarterback, we hadn't been successful, and we didn't have a great roster, and obviously everyone knew we were cheap. So we weren't a great landing spot once again. These guys that are going to be first-time head coaches in this league, you more often than not get one shot. You get one shot. If you fail, you don't get another one. It is very rare that a guy fails in his first job and gets another opportunity. So they have to be very picky. Guys like Brian Callahan, they don't have a whole lot of options. So, yeah, they go to the teams like the Titans. I think the Bengals are an attractive guys is an attractive spot for guys because they know they have one shot. And if I have one shot at being a head coach in this league, I feel pretty dang confident with Joe Burrow as my quarterback. So I think that we are more attractive of a spot as even Cincinnati Bengals fans will lead on to believe. I don't know your opinion.
The conversation that every head coach candidate is going to have the conversation with their agent is, do I want to work for, let's say the Bengals up their budget and they pay $7 million a year for the next head coach. Okay.
Sure.
Do I want to take the Cincinnati Bengals job and potentially have success at $7 million a year? Or because most of these guys have the mindset that I can change and fix almost any situation. Or do I want to hold out for one of those jobs paying 10 to 12, knowing that if I have success, regardless, I'm not jumping, right? If I go to Cincinnati and I have success in Cincinnati, I'm in Cincinnati and I'm staying in Cincinnati. Because when was the last time you saw a head coach jump from a head coaching job to a head coaching job without getting fired or forced out at their previous job? Nobody's being successful in the NFL as a head coach and jumping to another job.
Yeah.
So they have to have that conversation of, well, I'm going to, over the course of my career, probably make 50% less than I would other places. And I think I'm good enough that if X job opened up, I could turn that job around and I could stay there and I could be happy. Cincinnati is not exactly a place that people are jumping to be at. So That's the conversation.
I hear you. I hear you understanding that, yeah, guys pretty much stay at one place unless they've been forced out or anything like that. But as I mentioned earlier, like they oftentimes have one shot at this, right? And they know that if they come here and have even success, and maybe it falls out. Maybe the first few years you make the postseason, but then those last 2 years were kind of bad, and we'll move on. Then you're gonna at least get some more interviews. People are gonna be like, yeah, well, remember those first few years with Joe Burrow? That wasn't too terrible. Or even this, you would have some bargaining power. We haven't really seen that from coaches to where they can go bargaining and be like, you know what? I don't necessarily like it here in town. I know Joe Burrow's here, but I'm not really ready to be locked in unless you start paying me a lot more money. I'm going to take this season and then I'll go look somewhere else. So there is an opportunity to kind of mold the market in your image. I'm just telling you that here in Cincinnati, it is a more attractive spot than it has been pretty much ever in the history of this franchise. And it is because of Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. I think we've got to see how things shape out for the rest of the year because there are a lot of coaches that have been rumored, and I know they're far-fetched, been rumored to be on the hot seat, that I'm intrigued to see what happens. I think the name that comes around, and it's been several weeks since his name has been thrown around, but there was a time when Matt LaFleur's name was getting thrown around as he could get fired. Obviously, that's not going to happen. We thought it was far-fetched then, and now with all the injuries, he has a built-in excuse. He's going to come back, but that's another name. The Packers go like, you know what? I think we should go elsewhere in this. Oh, my goodness. Would I leap out of my chair to go hungry for him? And I think that's a really good fit. I think that'd be a really good fit here in town. So,
well, let's not forget Connor Orr's article from a couple of days ago, the senior writer from Sports Illustrated. Sports Illustrated? Who says it like that? Sports Illustrated.
Sports Illustrated. It is an illustration of sports.
Yeah. Many industry eyes are on the Bengals where there is massive curiosity about whether Cincinnati will move on from Zac Taylor. The opportunity to work with Joe Burrow is a market shifter. And I do believe that, like you're saying, there's a potential that some of those big names would want to work with him. So I know you have buy or sell on your rundown, and we've only got like 5 minutes left, and we haven't even talked about the article for the most part. But let's do a lightning round of buy or sell. I'll give you the name. You tell me if you're buying or selling them as a candidate for the Cincinnati Bengals next head coach.
A legitimate candidate or someone that I'd want to hire?
Someone that you would want to hire.
Okay. Sling it.
So tell me if you're buying them, if you're in charge as the next head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yes,
Jeff Hafley.
I buy. I like Jeff Hafley. Yep. He's been a head coach before. He's been a head coach before. That's kind of a thing that I'd want.
Correct.
Vance Joseph. I'd buy that too. Once again, has been a head coach before. He's not learning on the job. And he's a defensive guy.
Brian Flores.
Boom, boom. Brian Flores got a bad rap in Miami. That's a name that I'd be very, very hungry for.
Okay.
Bye.
Matt Burke.
So he's
Jesse Minter.
I Mount St. Joe legend selling. And I know that's one of the hotter names because I want a guy that's coached before. I can't have you learning on the job in Joe Burrow's age 30 season. I can't have it. So,
Joe Brady.
Sell. And it's partly I'm jaded a little bit because I'm tired of hearing about the 2019 LSU Tigers here in town. I'm tired of that being a guiding principle on what the Bengals should do going forward. Is you remember that 2019 LSU season? It was awesome. It was 6 years ago. Let it go.
Mike McCarthy. We know your answer.
Big old buy. That's a big buy for me. He's a proven winner.
Gruden.
He's a proven John Gruden. I'd buy.
Oh, come on.
Can we have a conversation?
He said.
Can we have a?
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No,
I was
you
going to
first.
say he says come on because he's a proven winner. Why do you say come on? That
The come on was the Gruden. Gruden's
okay.
been out for way too long.
Okay.
Way too long. I'm in on McCarthy too. That might
did
be
you
one of your
give
best takes, Reed.
Your answer on John Gruden?
He said he
What'd
would
you say
buy
on John Gruden?
I said buy. I think the personality fits really well with where I want this franchise to go. I'm kind of tired of the vanilla Zac Taylor, and Gruden ain't gonna give you vanilla. You're getting sprinkles. You're getting a caramel topping. You're getting a crunch coat. You're getting all sorts of things. You're not just getting vanilla. You're getting Rocky Road, baby.
Ryan Day.
Sell. Listen, I am a man of God, and if I wanted to bring a satanic team's head coach into Cincinnati, you're gonna find me hung up somewhere. So yeah, selling Ryan Day.
Matt Patricia.
I'm selling that one. I can't get onto that one. I know it ticks a lot of the boxes that I've said, but I'm selling Matt Patricia.
And outside of John Gruden, maybe the most popular name in our comments on social media, Bill Belichick.
I said 3 years ago on this show, and I got laughed out of this room by Tom Brenneman and Elliot Rearing for saying that I'd rather have Zac Taylor be the head coach than Bill Belichick. Another prerequisite on is you cannot have a Pablo Torre finds out episode about you within the last year to be my head coach. So if you've had a Pablo Torre finds out episode about you within the last year, I'm out. I'm out of it. All right, so that means that Mark Cuban and Steve Ballmer can also not be my head coach. That means that Riley Gaines can't be my head coach. So it's slim pickings when you include the Pablo Torre finds out. All right, Craig.
We didn't even talk about Duke Tobin. Can we just agree that the least surprising part of the Paul Dehner article this morning was that Duke Tobin is safe?
I saw the excerpt from this because I didn't get the blessing of reading the entire article. I saw the excerpt where he said, Paul Dehner has never faced as much external pressure for his job than he has right now. But inside, he ain't going anywhere. It's like, God, it's like, are you kidding me, dude?
It's a quick enough excerpt. I'll read it for you real quick. Yes, in most places, the de facto general manager of a team that missed the playoffs 3 consecutive years while employing Burrow, Chase, and T. Higgins would be on the hot seat, specifically when considering a bottom quarter defense 3 years running, impacted by a debilitating series of roster construction blunders. That's just not the case here. There are cracks in the foundation, absolutely. There's no way around the results and outrage currently directed at Tobin by the fan base. He's never seen his role challenged or exposed to this level externally. Internally, however, it's just not happening. Tobin is viewed as family in nearly the same regard as the actual Browns and Blackburns. There is zero thought that his job is in jeopardy. He will have to lead the Bengals out of this drought, and ownership trusts him to do so.
Tobin is thought as family. We all have family here, and every once in a while there's an uncle or an aunt or a cousin or a sibling that you got to cut off because the relationship's just too toxic. They just keep messing the whole thing up. And Duke Tobin's been in charge of making the turkey and the stuffing and the mashed potatoes for years here, and we're pretty much all the food is inedible based off the draft picks that we've had the last few seasons. This roster is so freaking far away from competing at any level whatsoever, and the main reason for that is Duke Tobin, the de facto general manager here in town, and I am sick and tired of the draft picks that we are bringing into this town. If I have to see Mel Kiper question or whoever at the draft be like, man, I can't believe the Bengals took this guy here, or the stats come up and we drafting a guy at the 17th pick that has 3 career college sacks, collegiate sacks, I'm going to pull my hair out or what's left because it's receding at a rapid rate, Craig. So I get it. Nothing from that article surprises me, but it still fires me up, if that makes sense, because I've never been this
We have breaking
far.
News.
Oh, baby. Oh.
Breaking news, and we're going to fire Nick Kirby up. Nick, are you awake? Are you watching? Because the Cincinnati Reds just announced the 2026 Hall of Fame class for the Cincinnati Reds Hall of Fame. And we all know Nick Kirby has been pining for Reggie Sanders to get into the Hall of Fame. And I have good news. Reggie Sanders, a member of the class of 2026 for the Cincinnati Reds. He's joined by Lou Piniella, Aaron Harang, and none other than that dude, Brandon Phillips.
That's a good class. I'm glad
That's
Aaron
a
Harang.
Great class.
I'm glad Aaron Harang came in because Aaron Harang was a part of teams that were never good, but he was came close to leading the league in strikeouts every single year. Aaron Harang, obviously Brandon Phillips was a fan favorite, maybe the most popular Reds player of the last 25 years. Reggie Sanders was great in the 90s, and Lou Piniella obviously won a World Series here in 1990. So that's a good class. It's a good class for the class.
That is a good class. I would imagine that Kirby and I, or Kirby and somebody, will have a special Chatterbox Reds up for discussion about this here sometime today or tomorrow morning. So a little special plug for the Chatterbox Reds. But
yeah,
keep an eye out for a video on that. I'm sure it'll be coming out soon.
Craig, as always, thank you for letting me steal 30 minutes of your day. You get me fired up every time you come on here on the show. Hopefully we get some Chatterbox Bengals content together throughout the week. Thank you so much for doing the watch-alongs for the last 4 weeks. I'll be back this Sunday. I got to get you some time off I got to get you just a normal Sunday here.
I told you, we're doing it in person together.
Oh, that's
We're doing
right.
it together this weekend.
That's right. That's right. You're coming into town. You're coming up here. So hey,
let's do it.
Let's do it. Yeah, we're doing it live here from.
I'll get you all fired up in person this time.
Yeah. Maybe that's not.
It won't be hard.
Yeah, no, it's not.
Did you watch the Dolphins last night? Sorry, we're eating into Stone's time, but the Dolphins last night were.
Oh, it's all good. Keep it going.
The Tua in cold weather is as easy as an auto fade if you're into sports gambling as you've ever seen. There's a bubble with quarterback contracts, and Tua, Kyler Murray, those names, they're at the forefront of it. I don't know how you give guys just because they're a franchise quarterback $55 million is beneath me. Someone's got to stand their ground and be like, well, I'm not giving you $55 million. You can go to free agency. I don't care. We'll try somewhere else. Tua's arm looks like he's a Red Ryder BB gun or a water pistol of some sort when it gets cold or even when it's warm. So, but shout out to Mike Tomlin. He may have saved his job unless they lose by 40 points in their first playoff game once again. Then he might be out. And then hopefully we bring him into town. Man, wouldn't that be a change of press conferences? Craig, I got to let you go. We got to let Stone get on to his show. Thank you so much for hopping on.
All right, brother. We'll see you this weekend.
See you, Craig. Craig Salen. As always, we went 35 minutes today. The best part about doing this show, off the bench, by the way, is I don't say this enough. I think Cincinnati's first sports talk show. I think it's every morning. I know there's other content, but it's live every day here, 10 to 11, Stone Shield Show from 11 to 12. Thank you, everyone that was here. But the glorious part about not being on radio is we can kind of start and end whenever we want. I think we started at like 10:02 today, and now we're getting off about 11:05. So shout out to Craig Salen. I ranted, I raved about pretty much everything under the sun. We talked long and hard about the potential new Bengals head coach, even though there was an article today saying it's probably going to be Zac Taylor for the next 2 years. So that's what we do here on Off the Bench. Stone Shield Show coming up. See you guys tomorrow. Mailbag tomorrow, and we'll have some guests on as well. See ya.
All right, here we go. Welcome into the Stone Shield Show. We are here. We are live. It is Tuesday, December 16th. Appreciate everybody hanging out through Off the Bench into our show here this morning. Plenty of stuff that we need to discuss because Paul Dehner Jr., of course, friend of the show, covers the Bengals for The Athletic over at the Growler podcast as well. Has been doing that for a really long time. Kind of dropped the bombshell a little bit this morning, basically saying Duke Tobin, Zac Taylor, Al Golden, all the guys that people in the fan base have been clamoring, saying, hey, we got to get these guys out of here. We got to move on. We need significant changes to be made at the top of this organization. Dehner came out and wrote basically saying, that's not going to happen. So we're going to break down that piece. We've said that for a little bit here at the show, but I think certainly we're holding on to some hope that maybe they would go in a different direction with Duke Tobin. Maybe if Zac Taylor continued to lose over the next few weeks, they would go in a different direction at the head coach spot. But when you take a look at his contract, you take a look at what this Bengals team and this organization have done in years past throughout the entirety of their history as an organization, would suggest that they're probably not going to make any moves. So Paul Dehner Jr. has turned a lot of heads here this morning, but shouldn't really be surprising to many people, but we're certainly going to break down his comments from his piece. It's up on the Athletic right now. Really encourage everybody to go check it out. Paul does a tremendous job covering the Cincinnati Bengals, and we're going to break down that piece here on today's show. Maybe we'll throw in some potential Zac Taylor replacements. Craig Sandlin, we just had him on the show on Off the Bench. He broke some names down with Reed. By the way, that interview will be out in podcast form over at Chatterbox Bengals, wherever you get your podcasts, and the clip, the interview will be out, or not really the interview, but the segment will be out on YouTube there as well if you missed that. Great stuff from those two, Craig Sandlin and Reed Mouse. They'll have you covered with the watch party this week for the Bengals and Dolphins game, but we're going to dive into that, maybe some Zac Taylor replacements as well. I think going forward, we'll certainly dedicate a segment to really breaking down a long list of names top to bottom that could potentially replace Zac Taylor. But again, unless this thing gets even more ugly, you go 0-3 over the course of the next three, offense doesn't show up, maybe hangs a nothing burger on the board again, I would be surprised if Zac Taylor was released here at this point and not the head coach of the Bengals next year. But we'll break down that. Also, our NFL Power Rankings, we do it every Tuesday here at the show. Some shakeup at the top. We've had New England at 1 for a really long time. They fell after leading the game 21-0 against Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. So we'll break down our Power Rankings as we always do. New team at the top. A couple of new teams making their debut. And how about the AFC South? The Jaguars and the Houston Texans. They're coming. Who saw that coming? Not me. So we'll break that down. We'll also discuss the game last night. It's really Pittsburgh Steelers and the Miami Dolphins there. And, it was freezing cold temperatures in Pittsburgh. Didn't take a genius to tell you that the Miami Dolphins were not going to play well offensively in the game and that Pittsburgh was going to win. That's exactly what happened. How about Aaron Rodgers? Aaron Rodgers played really, really well. They're not asking him to do a ton as far as throwing the ball down the football field, but he's been really surgical, getting the guy to his playmakers, getting the ball out of his hands quickly, and a really impressive showing from Aaron Rodgers. And now, as things sit here on December 16th, it looks like they're a step above Baltimore as far as how they're playing offensively and defensively. Maybe they'll get T.J. Watt back here in the near future, but Pittsburgh at this point in the driver's seats to win the AFC North, which I don't think a lot of people saw coming into this year. Also, Arch Manning, he's going to be back at Texas. They will play Michigan in their bowl game, but Arch, to the surprise of not many people, deciding to come back. Was a very rough start for Arch Manning at Texas, and he was in the crosshairs in the media. The Nepo baby accusations, people saying he was a bust, people saying, he was adopted, just all this crazy stuff about Arch Manning. He started playing well at the end of the year, and this is absolutely the right call. And if he can build off how he finished this year, play like that next year, he'll certainly be a first-round pick. But the right call for Arch Manning. The hype, of course, was a little bit too much. People saying, he's going to win the Heisman, he's going to be the number 1 overall pick. That obviously did not end up happening, but he is going to be back for the Texas Longhorns and head coach Steve Sarkisian next year. And we'll finish out today's show with a little UC Bearcats football conversation. Brendan Sorsby is going to hit the portal. He will not play in the bowl game against Navy. Shouldn't surprise many people that Sorsby is departing. I think pre-NIL, he certainly is probably going to go to the NFL and test the waters there. Reportedly, he's still thinking about it, but he's going to get $3-4 million somewhere and have a chance to compete for a national title. It would be a massive mistake for him to declare for the NFL draft here at this point. He'd be a day 2 pick. He's got some traits that a lot of the scouts certainly I've fallen in love with, but you see where they're at from an NIL perspective. And Scott Satterfield, head coach, was brutally honest, basically saying, like, yeah, we can't afford him here at this point. Bearcats were paying him 7 figures this year. That number is going to be around $3, $4, maybe even $5 million for Sorsby. He's going to be one of the hottest names in the transfer portal, and that's just not something UC can do here at this point. So we'll have a little Brendan Sorsby conversation to round out today's show. Also, the Miami Redhawks in action tonight against Wright State. They look to stay undefeated, only a 1.5 favorites. 1.5 point favorites in the game tonight, and I think that shows you a little bit. Obviously, they've won a lot of games here. They're undefeated. Haven't really played anybody. Vegas saying, pump the brakes here a little bit on the Redhawks, but they're in action tonight. Best of luck to Travis Steele and the boys as they look to stay undefeated against a in-state opponent in Wright State. Also a nice college basketball game on ESPN there as well. Tennessee Volunteers going to be in action on ESPN against Louisville, which should be a really compelling game on the college basketball front. But let's talk about the Cincinnati Bengals. Let's break down this article from Paul Dehner Jr., covers the Bengals for The Athletic, friend of the show. We've had him on, host of the Growler podcast as well. And the things that he said in this article didn't necessarily surprise me, and I don't think it should have surprised many of you either. But at the same time, when somebody who's as reliable and as close to the team as Paul Dehner is, when he goes out there and pens a piece like this, it should turn a lot of heads, and that's exactly what it's doing right now. He's got great insider information on how the team operates. He's covered them for a long time, and he understands how this team probably is going to proceed over the course of the next few weeks and certainly into the offseason as well. Now, if you clicked on this particular video, I was suggesting in the title that maybe major changes would be made for the Cincinnati Bengals. And I think a lot of people in the fan base, a lot of people that cover the NFL nationally would sit here and bang the table and say, absolutely, major changes should be made. Absolutely, the guy that's drafting these players and continues to whiff year after year after year in the first round, in the second round, in the third round, he should be held accountable. He should be released of his duties. The head coach that has Joe Burrow, has Jamar Chase, has T. Higgins, has had Trey Hendrickson, has missed the playoffs now for 3 consecutive years. Maybe there should be a change as far as who is running the operation as the head coach of this football team. For the defensive coordinator, who's in year 1 with the team here in this stint with the Cincinnati Bengals, that was leading for what was a historically bad defense for much of the year, a defense that was compared to some of the worst defenses in the history of the National Football League. Well, guess what? None of those guys are probably going to be relieved of their duties, all of which will probably be back for 2026 and maybe even beyond that. Here's a couple of noteworthy quotes that Paul outlined in his piece that I wanted to bring to your guys' attention and kind of break down. First, I want to tee this up by basically explaining, which we talked about on yesterday's show, all of the horrible things that have happened with this organization over the course of the past 24 to 48 hours. At the top of the list, they were eliminated from playoff contention, right, for the 3rd consecutive year. I've made the point several times on the show, as long as Joe Burrow is your quarterback, you should never miss the playoffs. I understand Joe Burrow didn't play much of this year. I understand a couple of years ago he didn't play much of the year either. I understand that has a direct impact on your team making or missing the playoffs. But the bottom line is the AFC North has been absolutely horrible this year. And you've had plenty of opportunities to win games with Joe Burrow, the Buffalo game, and without Joe Burrow, the Bear game, the Jet game, right, with Joe Flacco at the helm. And you were unable to do it. If you just get one victory, shoot, 2, you're in a great spot, but just one victory against one of those teams, you are still alive. Maybe not alive and well, but alive in the playoff race, and you were just too incompetent to be able to go out there and stay alive in the playoff race, and you find yourself eliminated here on December 16th with 10 losses on your resume this year. That's thing number one. You've got your quarterback at the podium. Seems pretty depressed during his weekly press conference meeting with the media, right? He goes out there and says, I got to figure out if I can have fun playing this game still. That wasn't the direct quote, but it's something along those lines. And it's got people nationally running laps going, oh, my goodness, does Joe Burrow want out of Cincinnati? Now, thankfully, after the game, he kind of put a stop to those comments, but not good, bottom line, that transpired within your organization here this past week. And then after the game, he goes, yeah, we're a losing football team. We do losing things out on the football field. Not great to have your guy out there saying it, although he, of course, is right. What else happened? Well, the Ravens beat you 24-0 at home, right? You were at home, freezing temperatures. You have your fans come out, right? And you can't even score a singular point in the game. You lose 24-0. Oh, how about on top of that, we talk about, they can't wipe off the seats, right, for the fans that showed up to the stadium and it was so cold. They couldn't remove the snow from the seats, right? Oh, they had to shut down some of the gates because not enough people were working, and that caused a bottleneck, which caused many fans to get into the game after the game started. Not a great look for your organization there either. You got Jamar Chase, who gets caught on camera cursing at the fans, basically saying, well, if you're going to heckle Joe Burrow, you can get the heck out of here. Respect Jamar for those comments. If you're at the Cincinnati Bengals game and you're going to heckle Joe Burrow, yeah, it's within your right as a fan to do it. You paid hard-earned money to get in the stadium. I understand that. There's a lot better people you should be heckling than Joe Burrow. I understand the offense scored 0 points, but come on. Let's understand that. And you couple it with Zach Moss, who, of course, was your starting running back week 1 last year. He goes out there, puts out a post, and says, you know what, this is the worst team and the worst organization in all of sports. So a pretty bad look for this organization over the course of the past few days and certainly over the course of the past week as well. And a lot of these, right, if just a handful of these things that happen at other organizations, fireable offenses. Nobody has gotten fired here for the Cincinnati Bengals as we sit here on Tuesday, December 16th. But let's kind of dive into this piece a little bit from Paul. I thought there were some interesting comments. I've said that I don't think the Bengals are going to move off of Duke Tobin, right? Paul has come on this show. Other people that cover the team, Jay Morrison, Richard Skinner, have come on this show, and they're like, yeah, Duke Tobin, we've been here for several years. We've watched this thing. Him and the ownership group, they're like this, right? Him and the Brown family, they're like this. Him and the Blackburn family, they're like this. There's even been a quote about, oh, you know what? He's basically an extension of the family, an extension of the ownership group, and Paul certainly alluded to that in his piece. As it relates to Duke Tobin, Paul Dehner said this. Internally, it's just not happening. Tobin is viewed as family in nearly the same regard as the actual Browns and Blackburns. There is zero thought that his job is in jeopardy. He will have to lead the Bengals out of this drought, and ownership trusts him to do so. That's as cut and dry as it gets from Paul Dehner Jr. That's not, well, maybe they'll move off him. There's a chance they could go in a different direction. That is 100%, it ain't happening. Duke Tobin's a big reason they're into this mess, but the ownership group trusts him to get out of this mess. Shouldn't surprise you. A lot of us, myself included, I've called for that man's job. And I don't take that lightly. To come on here and call for somebody's job, I don't think necessarily it's my place to do it, but I've done it with Duke Tobin because I just think things have been that bad. And Paul Dehner Jr. is saying, yep, nope, ain't happening. Duke Tobin will be back with this team next year, and he will be overseeing the draft in April in 2026. And ultimately, we'll see if he can help dig himself and dig this organization out of the mess in which he certainly has a significant hand in creating. A couple more quotes from Paul Dehner Jr. Let's transition here to Zac Taylor. Right? I think there's kind of a split between people locally that follow the team, fans of the team, right? There's some people that say, you know, Duke, let's blame Duke. Some people would say Zach, let's blame Zach. There's some people that say both, blame both, get them both out of here. As it relates to Zac Taylor, here's what Paul said. There are a few key points surrounding Taylor's status. For one, his contract will be a factor. Contrary to prior reports, Taylor actually has 2 years remaining on his contract after this season, not 1. The Bengals don't like to pay head coaches money for them not to coach. People call them cheap, right? That is certainly a cheap tendency, right? A lot of ownership groups in the NFL, a lot of owners in the NFL, they're so rich, they have billions of dollars. It is just a rounding error for them to say, you know what, it's not working here. You're gone. We'll pay you not to coach. Bring someone else in. For these billionaires, it really means nothing, which is really hard for people like me and you to comprehend because we're talking about millions and millions of dollars. A lot of these billionaires in the NFL, they're like, yep, whatever, see ya. We'll pay another guy and still pay you not to coach. Brown family, they're billionaires, right? But they don't operate like they're billionaires. And, you know, all these NFL owners now are billionaires, but when you look at kind of how rich some of these are, the Bengals and Browns are certainly at the lower end of the spectrum as far as how much money they do have. But we saw it with Marvin Lewis, right? Going into the final year of his contract, everybody was sitting down. The Bengals were a complete mess. And it's like, dude, any other organization would fire you here at this point. Mike Brown, he sat down with Marvin Lewis and said, you know what, you're going to be a lame duck this year. You're going to go in without a contract beyond this year. You're going to coach. That's what happened. It didn't go well, and they moved off him, right? And, you know, we're not the Pittsburgh Steelers here in Cincinnati, but they don't love firing coaches. They're a very patient group. And this is a guy in Zac Taylor that, of course, has taken this team to a Super Bowl, which feels like that was a lifetime ago. But they've got no interest and paying money to a guy not to coach. And it's a great point by Paul. A lot of people think, oh, you know what, maybe this would be his time to, get an extension, right? Well, there's 2 more years. There's 2 more years. So the Bengals by no means have to give him an extension. I think the city would explode if they gave him an extension at this point after this year. But there's no pressure. It's not like he's going into the final year of his contract. There are 2 years left here, 2 more full seasons for Zac Taylor. And I think to me, again, other organizations, it's a rounding error. They move on, right? It's not how things operate here in Cincinnati. Would be shocked ultimately if they moved off of Zac Taylor. He signed a 5-year extension following the Super Bowl season. Then after reaching the AFC Championship game in 22, he signed another 5-year extension through the 2027 campaign. I think that gets swept under the rug a little bit because, it looked like, oh my goodness, the Bengals they have a chance to be a dynasty. They have a chance to rattle off multiple Super Bowls. They went to one, lost, got to the conference title game the following year, had multiple opportunities to win that. So the Blackburns, they're like, oh my goodness, we got something great here. And Zac Taylor gave him another extension that next year, which I think a lot of people forget. Totally different. If next year is the final year of his contract, there's 2 more for Zac Taylor. And lastly, they've been a top 10 offense over the course of the last 4 seasons. It's true, even with Burrow missing some time. With Burrow among the best quarterbacks in the NFL, blowing up that side of the ball with all the problems that need to be fixed on defense would create an entirely new set of unnecessary issues. People don't like to hear it, but it's the reality of the situation. I understand the team scored 0 points last week, right? I completely understand that. But when you go big picture here, you take a step back, you go, shoot, Bengals with Jake Browning in 2023, they won some games. Bengals with Joe Flacco here this year, only won 1 game. They look pretty solid on offense. They were one of the best offenses, actually, in the National Football League. And I alluded to this yesterday, and this is how the Brown family and the Blackburn family are going to look at this. They're going to go, we got all kinds of issues on defense. Who knows if we can get this thing fixed on that side of the football? Well, what if we move off of our head coach? What if the offense takes a turn in the wrong direction? Now we have this horrible, incompetent defense paired with an offense that isn't that great. Then you got a whole world more of trouble on your hands at that point if you're the Cincinnati Bengals. And clearly, that is not in a position you would want to be in. As I mentioned on yesterday's show, there's a portion of the fan base that sits here and goes, fire everybody. It can't get any worse. I got news for you. It can get a heck of a lot worse than it is right now. Take a look at Las Vegas. Take a look at New York with the Jets. Take a look down at Tennessee with the Tennessee Titans. Things are bad here in Cincinnati. And it feels even worse because of how far you fell from the expectations and the aspirations you had going into this year. But don't be fooled here. They can get a heck of a lot worse. And the final domino here is Al Golden. What the heck do you do with Al Golden? As I mentioned at the start of this segment, going into the year, beginning of the year, you were in a spot with Al Golden where he was conducting one of the worst defenses in the history of the National Football League. Right? And I'm not here to say this Bengals defense is a top 10 defense now. I'm not here to say that this Bengals defense is good. I'm not here to say this Bengals defense is serviceable. But the Bengals defense clearly has taken some steps in the right direction over the second half of the season, right? And you already played that card last year, firing your coordinator, right? And it'd be one thing if you fire Lou Anarumo and he was doing horrible in Indianapolis. That's not what's happening right now. He's keeping the Colts alive here in this thing as they got a 44-year-old playing quarterback for them and Phillip Rivers. Defense is hanging on, doing the best they can. Lou Anarumo's done a really nice job in Indianapolis this year. The last thing you want to do is fire another coordinator and bring in a new guy, and that be the issue, right? It'd be one thing if you didn't see any improvement from week 1 to now, you've seen some improvement, right? So Al Golden, probably not going to be a guy that you move off of. And if you're Zac Taylor, the last thing you want to do is just continuing to fire coordinators, because lots of people are going to say, actually, it's not the coordinators that are the issue. It's you. That's the issue. And a lot of people, of course, are saying that here right now. But you look at this Bengals team with 10 wins here on December 16th, 10 losses here on December 16th, in a spot in a year where they came in, right, with Super Bowl expectations, and they have fallen this short. You would think major changes would be happening for this team. But as Paul Dehner points out, doesn't look like any are. Head coach, a couple years left on his deal. Bengals aren't in the business of paying a guy not to coach. Probably coming back. Hasn't lost the locker room. Probably coming back. Duke Tobin, a guy that continues to miss time after time after time again. in all 7 rounds of the NFL draft who continues to go through off seasons and neglect very important areas when it comes to roster construction? Well, he's tight. The Blackburns love him. The Browns love him. He's kind of in the ownership group, right? He'll be sticking around too. And people haven't said this, but if Duke Tobin sticks around after this year, I think it's safe to say, oh, yep, he's got a lifetime contract. If they keep Duke Tobin around going into next year and they let him oversee the 2026 NFL draft, we might as well stop talking about firing him because he has a lifetime contract at that point with the Cincinnati Bengals, which that's a pretty good gig, right? You can oversee operations. I understand there's a lot of pressure that comes with it, but if you can oversee operations in the National Football League, not have the pressure to be tagged a general manager, just a de facto general manager, and as badly as you do, you can keep coming back. You can keep making draft picks. You can keep making trades. Bengals, of course, don't do that, but you can keep operating here in the offseason and free agency. You don't have to do well. Keep coming back. We won't give you that general manager title, but you'll be the de facto general manager. You'll call all the shots. You don't have to succeed, but you can keep your job. Not a bad gig to be signed up for. And then the final domino, of course, Al Golden. Well, I mean, you're going to fire a guy again? You just fired a guy at the defensive coordinator spot. And the defense has gotten better. Last thing, if you're Zac Taylor, who knows, right? I mean, Zac Taylor understands, right? Any other place in the National Football League, he's gone, right, by now. And he's got an opportunity here in Cincinnati. Not a great look for Zac Taylor if he fires Al Golden. And it's Zac Taylor's decision to make. So now all of a sudden you sit there, you look at the record, you go 10 wins, a fall from grace, expectations and aspirations that were through the roof. Right? Let's remember that, right? This team, you may not believe that they were going to compete for a Super Bowl. That was the design. They gave Trey, they didn't give him a long-term deal. They gave him that bump in salary, paid him a ton of money this year. The whole point was, oh, this is our year. We're going in. All the chips on the table to win a Super Bowl. And you sit here on December 16th, and you already have 10 losses. You already have 10 losses. So all the people out there hoping that major change was going to be made, doesn't look like any major changes are going to be made for the Cincinnati Bengals. And that's very tough to swallow. It's very, very tough to swallow when you have a team that falls so short of your expectations, and it looks like they're just going to, you know what, let's run this thing back. Let's continue to build on what we have. This wasn't supposed to be a rebuilding year, despite how bad you were on defense last year. This was supposed to be a year where you could compete for a world championship, and you can't even sniff the AFC North in what's been one of the worst years, probably the worst year in the history of the division. Now we can kind of transition this conversation a little bit. We'll do a full segment on Zac Taylor replacements. Lots of people are doing them out there right now on guys that you could come in to be the head coach. Not going to do a full list here on the show, but I do want to throw around a couple of names to monitor as well if Cincinnati ultimately were to make a move. Now, all the things I just said, all the things that Daner pointed out, right, talked about the week that the Bengals had, the weekend that the Bengals had. It's a fireable offense across the National Football League at a lot of other spots. Not a fireable offense here in Cincinnati. But they can't afford to do this again, right? You saw the Miami Dolphins last night. That didn't look good. You can't afford to go down there and get blown out, right? You can't afford to have the Cardinals come in here, who are a horrible football team, and beat you. The Browns, we'll see. But, you know, Paul pens this piece, and I agree with everything he says, just that it's going to happen, not that it's the right thing, right? Not that I believe that all those guys should be back, because I don't. I just anticipate that that's how Cincinnati is going to move forward here this offseason. We could be having a different conversation in a couple weeks, right? Now, if they win a game or win 2 games, probably no changes. But if the team quits, if they get blown out by one of these crappy teams, right, maybe things change. But as we sit here with 3 games left, that is how I anticipate things unfolding. But that's as bad of a week as an organization can have, right? You get shut out. Your franchise quarterback is turning heads at his press conference throughout the week, right? You got fans heckling your franchise quarterback. Jamar's caught on camera, calling him out. You got a former player who isn't just some random guy. He was your starting running back at the beginning of last year saying, one of the worst or the worst organization in sports, right? You got the national media piling on because he didn't brush off the seats and some of the gates were closed. It doesn't get much worse than that for an organization. That's about as bad of a week as you can have. And the Bengals, with the bar that they've set, which isn't very high, they might be able to navigate around this bad week and move on. But if this snowballs, right, and all of a sudden you go down to Miami, similar things happen, come home here against Arizona, you lose that game, things could get out of hand. Dak, by the way, also mentioned yesterday the plan is that Joe is going to play the remaining 3 games. Don't be surprised if they pivot off that going into the Cleveland game. That's what I've said here. I think you should play the next 2, and I think you sit down all your guys, Jamar, T, Joe, the final week against Cleveland. Zach said the plan is to play all 3, but don't be surprised if he changes his mind a little bit there, especially if they pick up a win or 2 here over the course of the next couple of weeks. But some names I do want to throw out. Bengals pay their head coach, what's Zach making, between $4 and $5 million. So the people out there, and look, Tomlin, if they win the division, is not going to get fired. Harbaugh, we'll see, maybe. And the people that want to throw out their names, they're going to get massive contracts, offers from other teams, right? The Giant job, for example. The Giants will pay either Harbaugh or Tomlin, if one of those guys was available, close to $15 million. Like, they will go all in for a guy like that. The Bengals are, they're going to offer 4 or 5. If they up it, they'll offer 7. I would be surprised if that happens. There's other teams across the league that aren't paying their coach a ton, but the Bengals certainly are at the bottom of the barrel. For all you people out there saying fire the head coach and bring Harbaugh in or bring Mike Tomlin in or bring one of these hotshot names in, it ain't going to happen, right? I understand, it'd be fun to come here and work with Joe Burrow. Well, how about go into New York where there's a little bit more stability? I understand they got brash ownership over there and pay you a heck of a lot more money, right, and be in a more stable organization, which is crazy to say that the Giants would be more stable than Cincinnati, but Giants aren't the Jets, right? The Giants are a heck of a lot more stable than what you've got here in Cincinnati. And there's these people out there that think, maybe there's a Joe Burrow discount. We talked about with Kyle Schwarber, right? A hometown discount. Money talks. There's no Joe Burrow discount. These coaches think that they can win wherever they go, right? And a guy like me would sit there and say, yeah, I'd work with Joe Burrow. I'd go to Cincinnati over New York. These top-of-the-line head coaches, they're going to the Giants job with a quarterback on a rookie deal before they're taking the Cincinnati job. They're making way more money there, and they're not thinking twice about it, just so we're all on the same page. One name that it gets thrown around, a lot of people roll their eyes at it. I don't think you should roll your eyes at it. If the Bengals hired Mike McCarthy as the next head coach, that's not something where – you plan the Super Bowl parade, you get all excited, you pop champagne, you say, we got our guy, right? That's not the quote-unquote sexy hire, getting a guy like Mike McCarthy. But he brings everything you need, right? All Mike McCarthy does is win, right? He got fired in Dallas for winning 12 games a year, right? Had a ton of success in Green Bay, has a world championship, has the experience of playing and coaching a star quarterback. Defenses have never been awful, right? He's an offensive guy, he calls the plays, but his defenses haven't been awful. And that's what you need for Cincinnati. You need a guy to come in, be a grown-up in the room, have some stability, understand how to keep this offense high-functioning, keep this offense functioning at a high level, stabilize the defense. I think Mike McCarthy, where it's not that big-time hire that lots of people are all excited about, brings a lot of stability here, and I think you could win right away with Mike McCarthy. Not saying he's at the top of the list, but he's a guy where it's like, yeah, I think about, bringing in Mike McCarthy here at this spot. Hafley's another name, defensive coordinator of the Green Bay Packers, right? Has head coaching experience at the collegiate level, was Boston College's head coach for several years, didn't have much success there, but I question, how much success Nick Saban would have had at Boston College. Very difficult place to win, right? Was at Ohio State for a year, I believe, co-defensive coordinator there, so some Ohio ties. Maybe this isn't the year where he gets thrown around in head coaching circles as far as head coaching candidates, but I think Hafley can be a good coach in the NFL. And again, that fits your budget, right? You could get away with paying Hafley $4.5, $5 million, right, here at this point. Another name would be Robert Saleh, right? The job that Robert Saleh has done in San Francisco is unbelievable. There's guys like Mike Vrabel and Ben Johnson that are getting a lot of Coach of the Year love. Personally, my vote would go to Kyle Shanahan at this point, and Robert Saleh has done an incredible job at this point, helping their defense. They got a lot of youth there. They're all hurt. All their stars, all their future Hall of Famers aren't playing on that side of the ball. You got a bunch of young guys out there flying around, and Saleh's done a tremendous job. Things obviously were horrible in New York. When have things not been horrible in New York when I'm talking about the New York Jets? He's one of those guys that, he's a retread. I would say Robert Saleh deserves another chance, and that's kind of a shift in culture, right? More of an alpha in the building, right? That's not really the personality that Zach brings to the table. Defensive guy. I would give Saleh another chance if I'm another organization. I don't think he should be judged based off his tenure with the New York Jets. Deserves one more shot, and he would be a name that I would monitor there as well. So to me, those are the three that immediately come to mind. McCarthy, Halfley, and Saleh, right, if you were looking in a different direction. Again, we'll go through a full list at some point where we'll really break down all the potential names that could also come in here and potentially be a coach for the Cincinnati Bengals. People say John Gruden. I understand it does engagement on social media, gets clicks. We love that. We understand that. Bengals aren't hiring John Gruden, and there's not a team in the NFL that's hiring John Gruden, in my opinion. I'd be shocked if they did. He's been removed from the game for so long. He's got the internet, Twitter presence. He's awesome. I love John Gruden. He's incredibly entertaining, and he knows ball, and he's won before. That was a long time ago, right? You're seeing this league. Like Bill Belichick wins all these Super Bowls. People say he's the GOAT. I don't think he's the greatest coach of all time, but people say he is, and he leaves after a couple bad years in New England and doesn't get hired. Right? Doesn't get hired. This league is going younger. It's getting more innovative. They're shifting in a different direction. Right? So I don't think Gruden's a serious name. Belichick, obviously not a serious name either. People say Joe Brady. He's had his moments in Buffalo. Clearly, Josh Allen and him have a great rapport. He's not one of those guys that's like, oh, he's a great up-and-coming offensive coordinator that's awesome. At some point, a team's going to roll the dice on him and offer him to be their head coach, and we'll see how he does. But the people in this town just like saying it because the LSU connection. Reed said this on Off the Bench. I completely agree. That was a long time ago, right? It worked in college a long time ago. Let's not live in fairyland, right? Let's not live in fantasy land. Oh, we're going to bring Joe Brady back here, and it's going to rekindle some of that 2019 magic. Come on. Now, if he was running a really well-oiled machine in Buffalo and the offense was high-functioning and not just relying on Josh Allen being spectacular, sure, bring him in, give him an opportunity. But I don't really see that being the case here. Brian Flores, I got no interest there. No interest, right? Kind of the Brian Kelly thing. I don't want a bad guy being the head coach. Part of why Zac Taylor has been here this whole time. Real good guy, Zac Taylor. I got no interest in a bad guy being the head coach. I'm out on Flores completely. Couple other names, some other retread options. You got Burke, the coordinator in Houston, who he's gotten some buzz lately, but, I'd pump the brakes there a little bit there on that. I think a lot of coordinators would look good with Derek Stingley and Will Anderson and Daniil Hunter and Bullock, their safety. I mean, they got dudes all over that defense. D'Amico does a nice job, so I'm a little hesitant there on a guy like Burke. But I think for me right now, and again, we'll do our full list going forward, but McCarthy, Halfley, Saleh would be kind of the three at the top of the list for me. But at the end of the day, that might just be all nonsense because it certainly looks like Zac Taylor is going to be back. I, of course, have backed Zac Taylor a lot. I haven't made my official proclamation on whether or not I think he should stick around. We will do that at the end of the season on that kind of Black Monday as coaches are getting fired left and right. But I think the next few weeks, as I said on yesterday's show, are very, very big for Zac Taylor, and we will see ultimately how he handles it and how this team plays and if they can pick up any wins here before this thing's all said and done. But disaster of a season for the Bengals, and great piece from Paul Dehner Jr. Encourage everybody to check it out on The Athletic, but doesn't seem like major changes are going to be made here with this organization. All right, let's roll through our NFL power rankings. We do it every Tuesday here at the show, 10-1. Got shake-up at the top. We've had New England at the top for several weeks, but they are no longer at that number one overall spot. So here we go. We got a couple teams just barely on the outside looking in. The Detroit Lions are fighting for their playoff lives. That's a really good offense. I think the head coach does a really nice job, and Dan Campbell, they got speed all over their offense. Incredibly fun to watch. Jamison Williams, of course. Jahmyr Gibbs, one of the best running backs in the National Football League. St. Brown is an incredible player. Jared Goff, with time, can deliver the rock and be accurate with the football. We understand that. I'm not writing them off for the playoffs yet. I still think the Lions are a dangerous team. They competed, hung in there against the Los Angeles Rams, but they got some issues on defense, gave up 40-plus to Matthew Stafford and company, which, of course, is a great offense. But I've got them just barely on the outside looking in. I've got the Eagles on the outside looking in as well. After the Cowboys lost, the Eagles are going to win that division. I understand they've been a bit of a dumpster fire, and I understand they played the Raiders, who are probably the worst team in the National Football League, so no reason to get all excited again about the Philadelphia Eagles. Hurts is going to settle in. He's stunk. We saw him stink against the Los Angeles Chargers. He'll settle in here. I think he'll play in the playoffs. He'll play solid football. This is a guy that had an all-time performance in the Super Bowl this past year, and of course had an all-time performance in the Super Bowl a couple of years prior to that, and albeit a losing effort. But Eagles not back in the top 10, but I don't think the Eagles are a team where it's like, oh, let's get excited and fired up to go into Philly and play them in the postseason. I know they have issues. I know they're not nearly as good as last year. The tush push, not nearly as effective. Got issues on offense. Nobody goes 3-and-out like the Philadelphia Eagles. I understand that, but they're going to be, I don't know if I'm going to say, oh, they're going to be a Super Bowl threat, but you don't want to go into Philadelphia in the wild card round and play them. Like that's not something that, really gets you excited if you're an opposing team. And then lastly, on the outside looking in, I got the Pittsburgh Steelers. To me, AFC North obviously has not been good whatsoever, but when I take a look at the division right now, as we sit here with a few games left, I think Pittsburgh's a more dangerous team than Baltimore. To be completely honest with you, Aaron Rodgers, say what you want about him, the way he handles himself, the decisions he makes, how he operates, how he speaks. He's playing good football, and he played really good. If you watched the game last night, again, they're not chucking it down the field. They really only have one receiver in DK Metcalf. Besides that, yeah, they got some tight ends that can play, but they don't have a ton of receivers for Pittsburgh. They're not throwing the ball down the football field. It's all quick game stuff, getting the ball out of his hands quickly, using the hard count, running the football. But Rodgers was exceptional in the game last night. The touchdown pass that he threaded over the middle in between a linebacker was an incredible play in the game last night. DK Metcalf kind of just bounced off a tackle, and that was just pure strength on display there from DK Metcalf. But Rodgers can still sling it. He can still sling it, and he can still move a little bit for a guy his age. I'm watching the game last night, and I'm going, Aaron Rodgers can move better than Tua, which we'll kind of get to that in a second, our next segment, kind of what to do for the Miami Dolphins. But the Steelers, they feel like a one and done. That's what they've always been, but it seems like another winning season. Mike Tomlin back in the playoffs. Mike Tomlin probably sticking around, but credit to them. They're kind of outlasting everybody a little bit here in the AFC North. Good chance that the final game of the year comes down to the division, and whoever wins that ultimately wins it. But I give the Steelers a slight edge over Baltimore here. Still on the outside looking in of our power rankings. All right, 10. Chicago. Look, last week they were unranked. After the loss they suffered to Green Bay, I am not in on the Bears at all. I think they got a lot of issues. I don't think they have many impressive wins, really. I don't think Caleb Williams completes nearly enough of his passes. He makes the incredible play. He had one throw in the game against Cleveland that was just absurd. The arm strength is incredible. The athleticism is incredible. But you can't miss layups, and I think he's going to miss some really easy throws in the playoffs, and it's going to cost him. But I got to give him credit. Ben Johnson has done a tremendous job. The talk and the dialogue going into the year was, okay, he's a great play caller, but great play callers aren't always great head coaches, i.e. Josh McDaniels. Ben Johnson is a great head coach. He will be a great head coach. Chicago's going to be an issue here for a while, but until they get better play at the quarterback position, more consistent play, I'm not going to go all in on them. I feel like they're a one and done in the playoffs. People were talking about them and the potential 1 seed going into the game last week against Green Bay. They beat the crud out of a bad Cleveland team, but I still got them at 10. At 9, the Green Bay Packers had them at 3 last week. They lose the Denver Broncos 34-26, and obviously with them at this point, it's kind of an injury situation for Green Bay, right? Micah Parsons, it has been confirmed. He has torn his ACL. He is obviously going to be out. Christian Watson, he has gotten banged up there as well, and all of a sudden, there's going to be a lot put on the plate here of Jordan Love, and I'm really interested to see how he handles it, to be completely honest with you. There's a world here where the Packers don't make the playoffs, not predicting that. I still have confidence in Jordan Love, but that's a couple of games now. It's like, you just don't fully trust him. Granted, Broncos, great team. We'll get to them in a second, but you had the loss to Carolina, you had the loss to Cleveland, you tied Dallas, right, and then you lose this game. Guys get hurt, so they slide down a little bit in my rankings, but Green Bay's still a dangerous team. Jordan Love can play. If they would have won in that game and won in Denver, we'd be talking about Jordan Love as a potential MVP, right? And that'd be a real conversation which we were having. Not the case here, but still good enough to be in the top 10. But the injuries, talk about it all the time in this league. There's an attrition aspect to being a great team and winning world championships. Sometimes that just doesn't swing in your favor, right? Kansas City has been healthy for several years, and it's resulted in a lot of wins. The Niners have not been, right? And that's kind of come back to bite them. Might be one of those years for Green Bay where it's like, that's a great team, but you just didn't stay fully healthy enough to really be an issue in the postseason. 8, I got the Jaguars. Nobody is talking about the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm not necessarily saying people should be talking about the Jaguars. I still trust the Texans more in that division, especially with that defense. We'll get to them in a second. Last week I had them at 10. They beat the Jets, who the Jets are a disaster. They beat the crud out of them. 6 total touchdowns for Trevor Lawrence, 48-20, just throttling by the Jacksonville Jaguars. Liam Cohen deserves a lot of credit. Now, it's Jacksonville, and, it's down there in Florida, and it's not, and I don't get a lot of people to go to their games. They've been, when you talk about the NFL over the course of my life, the Jaguars are probably at the top of the list for just jokes, right? The Jets, the Jags, and the Browns are really kind of like, they're always going to stink. So there's a hesitancy to trust them. Remember a couple of years ago with Trevor Lawrence, they got into the playoffs, won a playoff game with Doug Peterson, came all the way back after getting throttled at halftime by Justin Herbert. And, they're winning without having to rely too much on Trevor Lawrence. And he's starting to play better here over the course of the past few weeks. We saw him be a little bit careless with the football and miss some throws that a guy getting paid as much as he is shouldn't miss earlier in the year. That wasn't an issue for Trevor Lawrence here over the course of the past few weeks. And they're a dangerous team. Liam Cohen's got him playing with a lot of confidence. They play defense. They made some moves at the trade deadline to get some more pieces and some more weaponry for Trevor Lawrence. So I still need to see more. But if you're doing this, you got to have Jacksonville in your top 10 here at this point. All right, here's my first little hot take here. I got Seattle at 7. Last week I had them at 4. Most people are going to have them in the top 3. They beat Indianapolis 18-16. I'm really just starting not to trust them. You got to be a complete team to have success in the postseason. It doesn't take a genius to tell you that. That defense is really, really good. I've got some concerns a little bit with Sam Darnold. Right, throwing the ball down the football field, it's electric. He's had some big games. The combination with JSN has been tremendous. We understand that. But that Rams game from a couple of weeks ago kind of living rent-free in my mind. We get a rematch of that, by the way, Thursday Night Football, game of the year on Thursday Night Football this week. Could potentially be for the 1 seed, certainly the division up for the taking there as well. Really looking forward to that. I just don't fully trust Sam Darnold. There's this part of me that's like, yeah, he looks really good, but he's still Sam Darnold. We saw it at the end of the year last year. You win 14 games with Minnesota, and then you play bad at the end of the year for the division against Detroit, and you play bad against the Rams as well. So there's just something in my mind that I can't quite get over, but it's a really good defense. McDonald's done a nice job. They are dangerous, especially if they're playing games at home, but I've got them at 7. I think the Niners are better, even with all the injuries that they have on the defensive side of the ball. Brock Purdy is playing really well. Had that game against Carolina after the injury where it's like, do we need to be playing Mac Jones here? What's going on? Past few weeks have been really nice for Brock Purdy. Last week I had him at 7. They bump up one spot. They beat the Titans. Not saying much there. They scored 37 points, won that game 37-24. I think they're functioning at a very high level. I think Kittle, that combination with Purdy is a real thing. Shanahan deserves Coach of the Year love. McCaffrey's healthy. They run the ball incredibly well. Don't sleep on the Niners. I think that, if the Niners were playing the Seahawks in a playoff game right now, I think I would take the San Francisco 49ers. 5, Buffalo. Last week I had them at 8. They beat the Patriots 35-31. There's still that element to them where it's like you are so reliant on Josh Allen being spectacular. And if he's just good and not great, it's going to cost you a football game. Down 21-0, you come back in the snow. Just incredible from Josh Allen. And I don't think he should, I think Stafford certainly has kind of separated a little bit with the MVP stuff. Allen, of course, won it last year. This is a perfect opportunity for him to get to the Super Bowl, right? Mahomes is out. Burrow's out. There's a good chance Lamar Jackson is out. It's going to be you and a bunch of youngsters, guys like Bo Nix, guys like Drake May, of course, that are going to be competing, guys, unproven guys like a C.J. Stroud or a Trevor Lawrence, albeit those guys have some playoff wins under their belts. But this is really setting up to be a great opportunity for Buffalo. They don't have the team that they necessarily had over the course of the past few years. But as I mentioned, Boogeyman, he's out. Don't have to deal with Mahomes. Don't have to deal with Burrow. Don't have to deal with Jackson probably. That's going to give you a lot of confidence if you're Buffalo. I've got them at 5. I understand they lost to the Patriots, they just beat the Patriots. Still have the Patriots a notch ahead of them. They're 1-1 this year. They're done playing into the playoffs if that matchup ultimately ends up happening. I'm not panicking on New England. They were bound to lose a game at some point. If they just lose this game 35-31, maybe I don't even move them off the one spot. But when you blow the lead in which they did, it's very hard not to. And they deserve some criticism for that. Absolutely, no doubt about it. And I bring them down a little bit to the 4 spot. Drake May, I still believe in him and Vrabel and what they're doing. There's the people out there that say, they're a year early, right? They can get in, but can they really make noise this year? Only time will tell. We will find out, but still a top 5 team, in my opinion. All right, top 3. I got Houston at 3. right? Maybe I'm higher on them than other people. I've been on this for a while with the Houston Texans. When you have a defense that is that elite, right? Burke, their defensive coordinator. Nobody was talking about him being a head coaching candidate. Now we got Craig coming on here, and he's not crazy for saying this at all, saying, you know what, I would take Burke over Zac Taylor right now. Let's get him in as the next head coach of Cincinnati. A month ago, nobody's talking about him as a head coaching candidate, right? What he's done to the defense is tremendous, as I alluded to earlier. If you have Will Anderson, if you have Daniil Hunter, if you have Bullock, the safety, right? If you have Derek Stingley and Henry To'oTo'o and Al Shire at the linebacker spot, doesn't take, Einstein, or doesn't take, Dick LeBeau running your defense to be really, really good, right? Got a lot of dudes there, but he deserves a lot of credit. And if that offense can settle in, I understand they played Arizona, who's a bad football team. They scored 40 points in that game. I trust Stroud. He's won 2 playoff games in 2 years, right? They got some issues on the offensive line running the football, but I don't want to play Houston. If I am in the NFL playoffs in the AFC, I have no interest in playing the Houston Texans. I've got them at 3. And think about this. Going into the year, that's kind of what we said about them. We're like, they're going to win this division, no problem. Got off to a horrible start. Stroud got banged up. Now all of a sudden they're trending in the right direction. Give me Houston at 3. Denver at 2, right? Now I've been kind of similar to what I said about Chicago, super hesitant to buy all the way in on Denver. And I'm not buying all the way in here at this point, but they were winning in spite of their quarterback for much of the year. Now they are winning with their quarterback, not because of their quarterback, but he is helping them through the process of winning. He's playing with confidence. Sean Payton's dialing it up. He deserves a lot of credit. I said, Bo Nix, of course, was the last quarterback taken in the first round a couple of years ago when all these guys went in the first round. I said, you know what? He's going to have the best career. I pull back on that a little bit now, right, after a year and obviously almost 2 years of play. I think it's Drake May now. But I've been high on Bo Nix. And it took a while for this to play out. You still question whether or not there will be issues with consistency in a win-or-go-home playoff game. But you got to – after winning a game like that against that Packer team with that defense and Jordan Love, you had to score some points in this game. Bo Nix rose to the challenge. That was kind of like, okay, that's a bit of a stamp of approval, right? If you can go out there and score 30-plus – with that defense that you have, you can beat anybody and potentially win a world championship. Denver at 2, and the Rams at 1. I don't think anybody really can debate this, if we're being completely honest here at this point. Last week I had them at 2. They had the weird loss to Carolina. They had to go across the country, play at 1 o'clock. West Coast team, it's difficult. Not making excuses for them, but just not ideal to find yourself in that situation. You're going to lose some games in the NFL, but when you have McVay, you got Stafford playing. He's old, and you're talking about him potentially retiring coming in this year. Playing the best football of his career, seemingly, right? Played incredible in the game against Detroit. They win that game 41-34. You got no interest in playing the Rams. Now, injuries. Right, Devontae Adams, we'll see. I don't know if he's been ruled out this week or not. That is a huge loss, right? We talked about how important T. Higgins is for Jamar Chase. Devontae Adams is very important for Puka Nacua. You remove him from the equation, things can get a little bit dicey for you. But to me, Stafford's the MVP. He's playing at an incredibly high level. I don't think there's a guy you want calling the plays over Sean McVay here at this point. And to me, they're definitely the front runners to be Super Bowl champions. But ultimately, we'll see if that plays out or not. And what a game we have on Thursday Night Football this week as the Seahawks and Rams battle it out for, the 1 seed, winning the West there as well. So really compelling matchup on Thursday. But that is our power ranking segment here this week. All right, a couple more things I want to get to before we get out of here. The game last night, Pittsburgh plays Miami. Again, didn't really take a genius to say, yep, Dolphins aren't going to play well. Yeah, congrats, you went out there a little bit early. You had that practice at night. It was cool. The clips were cool. It looked good on TV. Was it going to translate to winning football for the Miami Dolphins? Absolutely not. I watched them play. And, Greer, of course, their GM, got fired early in the year. You had the reports this offseason about, these scrimmages against other teams, and they're like, yeah, the Dolphins are just a mess. Like, we don't understand what the Miami Dolphins are doing right now out on the football field. McDaniel has been in the crosshairs, certainly, and then he takes the podium. He's a nerdy guy, right, Ivy League guy, and sometimes it's like, I don't know if I would have handled that situation or that question the way in which he did. Again, he's a little bit quirky, and maybe you don't want that in your head coach. I kind of hope he gets to stick around next year. Because from a scheme perspective, he's brilliant, right? He is absolutely brilliant. What he has done in the run game, the adjustments that he has made. Understand, when he was with the Niners, he was the run game coordinator. That's what, got him this job with the Miami Dolphins. And then, they got all this speed. They get Jalen Waddle. They get Tyreek Hill. Tua, when the weather's good, can, hit that back foot, let it rip. And they were kind of throwing the ball around, right? And there was a while there where, especially early in the year, where it's like, these are one of the most, exciting offenses in the NFL. I'm talking early McDaniel days in Miami, not this year. And then, you're losing games early. He's fighting for his job. And then it's like, you know what? We got to have an identity switch here because our quarterback is not good. And we got to run the football. And he did it on the fly. Aikman was talking about this on the broadcast yesterday and really transcended what they do. Devon Achane's one of my favorite players in the National Football League. He is awesome. They're scheming it up perfectly, and they're blocking perfectly. And they had success in the first half running the football. And the effort in which they played with. I mean, they were tackling on defense in those conditions. They were out there hitting, playing like their lives were on the line, which I understand they had a bit of a playoff chance coming in. But just the run that they went on says a lot about Mike McDaniel. From a scheme perspective, I've got full belief in him, so I'm kind of rooting for him to stick around. We'll see ultimately if Miami chooses to make that decision or not. But clearly they got issues there at the quarterback spot. And Reed alluded to this on Off the Bench. These teams are so, happy to sit there and say, oh, let's pay the quarterback. It's like just because it's, his contract, his rookie deal is ending doesn't mean that you have to give this guy a ton of money. Even if you've won games with him, even if he's gotten you to the postseason, there's no rule that you have to pay guys like that. And now you got Arizona with Kyler Murray and now Miami with Tua, where you're sitting there with your hands behind your back. We're in trouble. We're in serious trouble. And I was a Tua guy coming out. But you just got to use your eyes here in this situation. And you go, well, you know what? He's not a tall guy. And you're starting to see this now. Bryce Young's had some success. He can still win the division. They just lost to the Saints, right? The smaller quarterback. It's not really working out, right? Kyler Murray, Tua, Bryce Young. Obviously, there's some, exceptions. We understand that. But I think, just use your eyes and say, you know what? These linemen are going to be 6'6", 6'7", right? And if you got a quarterback that's 5'10", that doesn't have a strong arm, it just doesn't really sound right when you say it out loud. So that's kind of the situation that Miami finds themselves in right now with Tua. You see people get out of these contracts all the time. Denver, of course, did it with Russell Wilson. You can survive it. I don't know if they'll opt to do it, but clearly they started having success when they said, Tua, we're just going to need you to turn around and hand the football off, right? And then Pittsburgh scored some points. It was close early, and then all of a sudden you look up, it's 28-3, and you got no chance with Miami. And if you didn't watch the game, you look at the final score, and it's like, oh, they didn't really blow them out. Credit to Tua, he kept playing, right? They scored there at the end. He made some good throws in the fourth quarter, albeit in garbage time. But it's like, if you're Miami, what's kind of your approach here going forward? How are you going to handle this position? Are you going to make a move off Tua or not? And I'm sitting there, and I alluded to this earlier watching the game. Aaron Rodgers is 42 years of age, and he's got a broken hand. And he doesn't, he used to move around great. Doesn't move around great anymore. But I'm watching him move, and I'm watching Tua move, and I'm going, Aaron Rodgers is moving better than Tua, right? So not only does Tua have a weak arm, right? Not only does he make bad decisions and turn the football over, also he can't move at all. He's like Jared Goff as far as his athleticism. So, and I was a big Tua guy. It's tough for me to say. But, in the NFL to win games, you got to be able to play in the inclement weather, right? Tom Brady in New England. Nobody was better in crappy weather than Tom Brady, right? These guys with big arms, right? Peyton Manning, he was a dome guy, but he could play out there because of his arm, right? And, Herbert is a dome guy now. He can play outside because of his arm. Caleb Williams, right? Huge arm, playing in Chicago, right? It's great the first couple weeks of the year when you're playing in Miami and it's hot. You got that Hawaii boy who was down in Alabama, no issues there. But when it goes to minus under 40 degrees, which is the whole narrative, he hasn't won a game, right? He hasn't won a game. It hasn't looked close. But I give McDaniel a lot of credit for what he's done in the run game. Achane is awesome. The effort was there for the Dolphins on defense. They've gotten better on defense. Really, they just have a quarterback issue, right? And unfortunately for them, they paid him a lot of money. And also of note, this is something, if you're going to get in the postseason, you're going to have to play in the cold, but look at your division, right? You got to go to Buffalo, and you got to go to New York, and you got to go to New England, right? All places, there's 3 road games right there. If you play them at the end of the year, it's going to be cold, right? And Tua has not been able to, play in those elements, and I don't think there's anything that would suggest that he's going to be able to figure that out. But from a Pittsburgh angle, you got to give him credit. I mean, we all sit here and say, Tomlin, it's a mess. Yeah, they're winning some games, but they're not winning enough. Move off them. We do it every single year. Going to have another winning record, it looks like. Going to have another home playoff game, it looks like. I guess we just got to stop doing this. To Mike Tomlin, I thought Rodgers was tremendous in the game. Obviously, I am a Bengals fan. I am not a Steelers fan by any stretch of the imagination, but I've always loved watching Aaron Rodgers play, and I've made this point on the show several times where it's like, these guys, Brady and Breeze, and, the Mannings, certainly, right? And then Rivers, but now he's back, and, these other quarterbacks that we grew up watching, or that I grew up watching, Aaron Rodgers, Big Ben, right, obviously. Flacco, with his time with Baltimore. And, Rodgers is like kind of that last one, even with Phillip Rivers, of course, back, at least for the short term now. But just appreciate it, right? You don't have to agree with what he says off the field. You don't have to say he's a good teammate. You don't have to agree with how he operates. But if you're a football guy, you love watching him play, right? And I thought he was tremendous in the game last night. He just knows how to outthink you, and he can still sling it. Right, he can still absolutely sling. He's one of those guys, like, I bet Brett Favre, like, you could pull him out of whatever he's doing, and he could still, rip an out route to the boundary, right? Like Aaron Rodgers, this might be his last year. Maybe he comes back for one more year. I'm sure it'll be a drama-filled offseason. Oh, is he going to retire or not? But he's a guy that 10 years from now could still rip that out route or rip that seam. He just got a lively arm to him. I love watching him play. Obviously, he's a member of the Steelers, so I wish them nothing but failures going forward. But to me, they kind of have separated themselves a little bit as far as, the AFC North. And in my opinion, looks like they're going to win, but good chance it's going to come down to that winner-take-all type of game against Baltimore the final week of the season. So certainly looking forward to that matchup. Unfortunately, the Bengals, of course, are on the outside looking in. Lastly, we're going to skip the Arch stuff for now, but I do want to hit on Brennan Sorsby before we get out of here. He made the announcement yesterday that he's going to enter the transfer portal. 2-year starter for UC. Gets him back into a bowl game this year. He's not going to play in the Liberty Bowl against Navy. This shouldn't surprise anyone, I would say. It's kind of unfortunate that they had a guy play that position at the level in which he did, and it didn't result in more wins. It was getting a little bit out of hand early on. People talking about, dark horse Heisman guy in Sorsby. Absolutely not. That was never going to happen. But you also have to sit there and say, he played the position really well for the Cincinnati Bearcats over the past 2 years, and candidly, it didn't equate to a lot of wins. He's going to be a guy that he's going to be one of the top names in the transfer portal. There's several, big-time quarterbacks that are out there. Sam Levitt, of course, tops that list. Made the playoffs with Arizona State. Got hurt this past year. He's going to be a big-time target. Raiola, who he was a high prospect, right? 5-star. He was supposed to be the greatest thing since sliced bread. Hasn't really worked out that way. Candidly, he's overrated, but somebody's going to throw him a lot of money to be a starter at a team that has national title aspirations. But Sorsby's going to be a guy that gets a lot of looks, and I think pre-NIL, maybe there's a world where he declares for the draft. He's still apparently figuring that out. I guess there's still a chance that he could. That would be a huge mistake if he did. There's some traits there with Sorsby. And, it's very important because you have these quarterbacks that you evaluate throughout the course of an offseason going into the NFL draft. And you have to understand, like Josh Allen, he played at Wyoming, right? Mahomes, he was at Texas Tech, but they didn't win a ton of games. So there's a lot of elite quarterbacks that maybe didn't play on elite teams in college. And I can see Sorsby. I can understand why NFL people like Sorsby, right? Because he's athletic, and we understand at this stage, this day and age of the NFL, you have to be able to move around. He can absolutely move around. He's got a lively arm, right? By all accounts, he seems like a good teammate, a good leader, and throws a pretty good spiral. There's some issues with some accuracy stuff, certainly, but I think a lot of NFL people would think that they can clean that up. It's a lot of lower half stuff, right? When I watch Joe Burrow, I don't think anybody's lower half is as good as Joe Burrow's is when he's throwing the football. Sorsby's is oftentimes out of whack, but he gets away with it because of how lively his arm is. So I get why NFL teams are interested in him, but this is the NIL, and this is your opportunity. You've played 4 years of college football. Was at Indiana for a couple, UC for a couple. This is your chance to go out and get some big-time money for a one-year deal playing college football. And somebody's going to throw it at him. My gut says Texas Tech. That's what everybody is saying right now. Texas Tech, of course, is a playoff team, is a national title team right now, but Baron Morton, their quarterback, will be gone. after this year. Will Hammond was their freshman backup who had to play a lot this year, who they have a lot of belief in, but he tore his ACL, so he's going to miss spring ball. I think, Texas Tech definitely probably in the market for a quarterback, and we were talking all kind of going into the year about, oh my goodness, Texas Tech is spending all this money. What in the world are they doing? This doesn't work at this day and age with the transfer portal. You can't buy your entire roster. Well, Texas Tech is saying not so fast right now, as they're in a great spot. Kind of a tough draw. Going to have to play Oregon right away in the quarterfinals, but Texas Tech can absolutely win the national title, and there's going to be some guys on their team next year that are, good players, right? And they got McGuire calling the shots there as their head coach. So I think there's, a lot of people that think Texas Tech can be good, certainly next year. And, apparently Sorsby's girlfriend committed to play a sport there. She's transferring to Texas Tech, and he's from Texas, so there's a lot of signs that point towards him potentially going there. They have the money, and UC was paying him 7 figures this year, but saw guys like Carson Beck get $3 million last year. I think that number, Neuheisel for CBS was saying that he's heard Sorsby might get $4 million. Right, so I think Texas Tech certainly intriguing. I think Indiana going to be in the portal again. How about that? Imagine if he went Indiana left, went to Cincinnati. Indiana goes on this run where they win the Big Ten, maybe win the national title, and then he comes back to Indiana. That could be another storyline for them there as well. So I think there's going to be some big-time teams that have interest in Sorsby. I would be surprised if ultimately he declared for the National Football League draft. I think that would be a tremendous mistake for him. I don't think he will, but Texas Tech certainly at the top of the list. Maybe a team like Indiana and maybe a team like Miami, perhaps as well, with some interest there in Sorsby. But I thought Scott Satterfield's comments were really telling. Yesterday, where they just asked him, it was like, can you afford him? And he kind of gave an answer and was talking, and then he was like, you know what, to answer your question, no, probably not. And that's just kind of the state of where UC is at right now. And look, they're in a big-time conference in the Big 12, but you've got these schools in this conference that are big-time spenders, right? Texas Tech is a big-time spender. BYU is going to continue to spend, especially with Satake staying around, the crumble cookie guy, putting all his chips on the table there. They're going to be a force spending a lot of money in the conference as well, and the UC just doesn't have the donors for that at this point. And unfortunately for them, they got a lot of money going to their basketball program, and that ain't working out at all, as we talked about on yesterday's show with Wes Miller and company. Lots of guys getting paid a lot of money on that team, and they do not look good whatsoever. As far as net ranking goes, I mean, they're outside of the top 100, and I don't think, candidly, it's very close. And they on paper, we keep talking about this, on paper, you got talented guys, you got highly recruited guys, you got good prospects. They just haven't been able to put it together. So unfortunately for UC football, I think this is probably going to be where they're at for the next few years. Like, they're going to have a guy, and if he comes in, especially at that quarterback position, and plays well, he's going to get a lot of money to go take his talents elsewhere. And I think you're seeing that here a little bit with Brendan Sorsby. And then the question becomes, where do you go if you're UC? I imagine they're going to tap into the portal again. Believe Samaj Morgan is their, really only top guy on their roster that could perhaps, be an answer for them. I think he was redshirt freshman this year, perhaps at that position going forward. Lichtenberg, who I've liked for a while, but he decided kind of just to stick around. I don't know if he thought maybe he would beat out Sorsby, or if he just likes it here in Cincinnati, what have you. I thought he had some talent, but, since Sorsby has come here, he's kind of used his eligibility and hasn't played. So it'll be interesting to see who starts the bowl game for the Bearcats, but this is just kind of where they're at in this day and age of college football. If you have a good player, right, and you can't knock Brendan Sorsby, right, he's good ambassador for the program for 2 years, good quarterback. But if you can go compete for a national title and make, 2-3 times what you'd be making here in Cincinnati, that's just kind of a decision that you have to make for, what's best for you. And at the end of the day, that's what I expect him to do. But it is just fascinating to me because, if you have a year like he had and you're getting this day 2 buzz, right? Nobody talking about, I think there was actually somebody for CBS Sports saying that Sorsby could be, a first-round type of guy. There's not many people talking about that. But I think the general consensus is like, this could be a second or third-round pick. Like, pre-NIL, you're like, oh, heck yeah, I played 4 years in college football, and now I got people saying I'm going to be a second or third-round pick. I'm gone. Well, now it's like, well, actually, you can transfer to a team, have a chance to win a national title, and make $3, $4, $5 million for 1 year of work to play college football. You're crazy if you want to go be a second or third round pick in the NFL draft. So it'll be very interesting to see how Sorsby kind of handles this decision. It'll be interesting to see how Satterfield and company evaluate that position, certainly going into next year. They get guys in the portal if they want to roll with Morgan there at that spot. But we talked about this with Chuck Martin a couple of weeks ago where it's like, he's just kind of used to this with Miami, where it's like, hey, you want to come here play for us? It's kind of like the minor leagues. It sucks to say out loud, but it's just kind of the case. If you go to Oxford and ball out, you got somebody calling you, wanting to give you money to go be a starter for them. And, UC certainly is a step or two above Miami as it relates to that. But as Texas Tech is going out there spending that conference, as a team like BYU is going out there spending that conference, right? If you go to Cincinnati and ball out, they're not really in a spot where they can retain you. And that's just kind of the unfortunate reality here of where the program is at. But I don't knock the donors. I don't think you should pour more money into the program. If you're these donors that have this money, these rich alumni or whatever, why should you put a ton of money into there, right? Scott Satterfield, I don't want to sit here and disrespect him. I don't know if he knows what he's doing. He was going to get fired by Louisville, and then you bring him in here because you had no clue how you were going to replace Luke Fickell, right? And it hasn't worked out for you, right? If I'm a donor, if I had a lot of money or rich alum, why would I put money into that? Like to win 7 games and then to get our best players poached, right? So until they can prove that they're serious within the Big 12, right? They're there to be a national title contender because the conference that they're playing in, right? They're not in the American anymore. If they have success in the Big 12, the money will come. But there's no reason from the alumni or any of the donors to throw money at them because it hasn't been good enough. And candidly, it has not been close either, to be completely honest with you. Great show here on a Tuesday. We appreciate everyone hanging out. Great viewership throughout our 2 hours of programming here at Chatterbox Sports. We appreciate everyone as always. Those segments will go out on YouTube later today. Also, the whole thing will be out in podcast form. Craig Sandlin, he joined Reed Mouse on Off the Bench. That was a great conversation. Talking about Paul Dehner's piece, talking about some Zac Taylor replacements there as well. That will be up on the channel later today additionally. But appreciate everyone as always, and we'll have another good show tomorrow. Make sure you hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. On our way to 22,000 subscribers. Follow us on social media at The Stone Shield Show on Instagram, at The Stone Shields on Twitter. Follow Chatterbox Sports, of course, on Twitter as well, at CBox Sports. Appreciate you all as always, and until tomorrow, take care, everybody.